Technology motivates us, guides us, vibes with us. But if you go back to the source, it's always been developers pushing us forward. Dreaming, blazing a trail. That's what it means to code, to engineer, to build. Because of all that they do, we're able to do what we do.
And we're live. Welcome to the MongoDB Cloud Connect TV show. This is a new initiative from MongoDB. We are running these Cloud Connect shows weekly from now on, and we're going to be taking our different cloud partners onto the show with us. I'm Shane McAllister. I'm on the developer relations team here at MongoDB TV, and we have a number of shows, not just the Cloud Connect show, coming up over the next number of days at MongoDB as well too. We have a show called Learning with Luce. Luce Carter, one of our developer advocates here, is learning live on air with colleagues and with friends, showing what she's learning and how she's learning with our community. We've got MongoDB Office Hours with Rick Houlihan, who's showing us data modeling and taking all our community's questions and hopefully answering them as well too. We have a weekly update show with a colleague, Megan Grant, who's showing everything that's happened both in the previous weeks with MongoDB and our community and our developer relations team and wider groups, and showing the events and conferences that we will be at. This is the Cloud Connect show, and we also from time to time are doing our podcast live on air too in the video. So we're really delighted to have you. This is the first Cloud Connect show that we're doing, and we have a really good interactive show today. I am joined today by my colleague, Dominic Frei, on the developer advocacy team too. And we're delighted to welcome Dominic, but we're really delighted to welcome Igor from AWS. How are you both?
I'm good. How about you, Igor?
Spectacular. Inaugural show. Couldn't wait.
So Igor, you're the data and analytics partner solutions architect at AWS. Tell us a little bit about the day job.
Right. So on my team, we work with strategic partners of MongoDB is one of such partners, of course. We are partner solutions architects, so we support the partners. We support all the motions that partners have within AWS. I'm like your champion within AWS, you may say. We're primarily focused on integrations between MongoDB Atlas and AWS services and how we can drive together with MongoDB consumption of the AWS services and make you successful. There are various programs with, yes, that's a side effect, successful.
Of course, a good side effect, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm going to make a lot of jokes. This is an inaugural show, and I didn't know what's called Connect. So we connect the people.
Well, this is brilliant. And look, we really do appreciate you jumping onto the show with us. We know you're in a hotel room in San Francisco.
No, this is data center. I am in the data center.
Clearly a data center.
Yes.
Clearly a data center.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's great to have you join us. And so, Dominic, you're on the developer relations team here. The day job, you look after an awful lot of what we build from a developer relations perspective with AWS.
Yeah, that's right. So my background is originally engineering, and I came to the developer advocacy about pretty much exactly a year ago now. So even though there's loads of different things to do on the advocacy side, I focus more on the code-heavy parts. So maybe put it that way: demos, workshops, things like that. And that's also what we're going to do today. Look a little bit at the coding and the technical part.
Excellent.
Of one such demo that we prepared for one of our booths.
Yeah, so we did. This is Leafsteroids. What is Leafsteroids? Leafsteroid is a demo game that Dominic and others have built here that we have used at a number of events before, and it's been great for us. It's eye-catching. It brings people in to come up and play the demo, and we get to talk about the architectures that are behind that. So it's MongoDB Atlas plus a lot of AWS services. So what we're going to do today, we really want you to get involved in this live stream. So if you see the link at the bottom of the screen there and you follow that, so mdb.link/Leafsteroids, you're going to end up on our repo for the game that we're going to show you how to put together and connect end to end. But the nice part about this live stream is that we're going to get you to try and play the game while we're talking about how we build the game. So you're going to be able to play the game. You're going to be able to register, play the game, and see yourself, hopefully, fingers crossed, on the leaderboard. And if you get on the leaderboard towards the end of our session here, which is probably going to take about 90 minutes, we've got some swag and some prizes for the top of our leaderboard. So if that's enough for you to get on board, let's get started. So Dominic, we're going to share screen and let's talk about what people are going to be doing.
Yeah, amazing. So I put the link into the YouTube chat as well, so make it easier for you to click. You should get eventually to this site. That's why the link is going to forward to you too, which is the GitHub repository for the app. And I'm going to talk about the architecture in a second, but let's maybe just look into what we're gonna go through today. If you go into the releases, and I highly encourage you to do so, you can download whichever version or operating system you're using. I'm on Ubuntu here, and there is a config file. The reason there is a config file will be clear from what we're doing today, because we're actually cloning. Let me just actually talk about that on the side as well.
Yeah, let's make it readable for the audience. Some of these people might be joining on their phones. Some of these people might be
not everyone likes to have the zooms set to a negative degree and have loads of space on the screen, but that should be big enough. So yeah, what Igor?
No, I always bring a portable microscope with me.
Yeah, that's probably a good idea when you see me stream, because I might forget
done.
to actually zoom in and then.
So this is the architecture diagram. Tell us a little bit about it on an overview and how it all connects together. So Dominic.
Yeah, so it all starts basically up here with what you just mentioned, which is Leafsteroids. It's a game created in Unity, but for those of you who are not game developers at all or not Unity specific, it doesn't matter. It's going to be a black box. It's going to be something that receives data and produces data and sends that back using AWS and MongoDB. You don't have to do anything with the game at all. That's why there's a config file to configure a server. But it's a nice way to produce data here. And what we've done is basically a two-layer system. So there is a game server running on an AWS EC2 that we're going to set up in a moment, which is a REST service that then uses another service in MongoDB Atlas, which we call app services, to actually communicate with Atlas and with our MongoDB that is hosted. And then on the other side, you as a user can also use a website, which I'm going to show you in a moment. What that looks like, where you can register, you can look at your leaderboard, you can see some charts and statistics. And that is using something that we call Atlas Driver, which is a framework, a library available for almost any somewhat important language, let me say it that way, to integrate your applications with Atlas as well and access. So as you can see, that's basically the data flow here.
And all of it bounded by that dotted box there. So we got the private cloud connecting the AWS services and Atlas, exactly. Right?
Yeah. That's the nice thing about the private cloud here is that we basically have a private connection back here. So your data is safely hidden behind or inside that private cloud.
Excellent. So for those tuning in on YouTube now, we want them to actually go to the repo, download the zip for whatever operating system they want, Linux, Mac, and Windows. And then we've got to get them to just put a config file into roughly the same directories as well. Can you talk us through that so people can get up and running while we get started with the rest of it?
Next. And I encourage you to, Shane and Igor, as well.
We have to
also
work.
Click the link, download it, because we want to play it a little bit.
Stream, Igor. You got to do some gaming behind this. Right?
I mean, there's a leaderboard, and who knows? Maybe we even give out some prizes in the end.
Yeah, I heard. Look, that was very appealing. You play games, you get prizes, you don't need to work. I mean, that's
isn't that great, right? You come on stream, you just like chill and play, and
yep,
that's how it should be. And I'm going to do the work, so that's great. The downloadable file that you find here is, depending on the operating system, going to look slightly different. For Linux, it's going to look like that. For Windows, it's similar. For macOS, it's just a .app file. For those of you who use macOS will know that, which you then have to open, and there's a contents directory in there. But the only thing that you basically need to do in that data folder here, let me see if I can. So you can actually see that I'm inserting something. There's one new file. And that file contains really just, let me see if I can make that a bit bigger. No, that's not what I wanted. I actually never used this one.
The joys of a large screen, Dominic.
Yeah, it's like I like a large screen, and then all of a sudden you have to zoom everything. The only config that we got here, and the only config that we really need, is the game server that we're going to set up in a moment, which is just the default server that we all play on for this game today, so that we all got the statistics into the same Atlas, and then are able to actually look at the data that we're producing there. And now let me just run that so that we can finally get to something that we can see, for which I need to move it over here. So when you start the game, after you put the configuration in there, and we will in the end adjust that for our own copied system.
Okay. It's important, I suppose, the event piece at the top. As we said, we use this at other events for MongoDB and for our partners as well too. But this is just a flavor of it we made just for this live stream. So that's the only one you're going to be able to choose from, right?
Exactly. So there is only going to be one event available to just make sure that there's no confusion. And as Jane already said, it's a booth demo. So there's also, you'll see another screen that says welcome to the live demo. The QR code is going to lead you to exactly the same link that I just posted. So you're not going to miss out on anything here. Then there's going to be a player screen. So now we come to something else that's interesting, which is a link that you'll find here when you read the instructions carefully.
So it's all back in the same repo. We tried, where possible, to put everything into that README in the repo, because this is public and we want everybody to get involved. So click on the register link. You do need to register for this game to play along with us.
And what I'm going to do here is, first of all, I can register here. Let me just...
Right, I've downloaded the game. It told me it could be dangerous.
You're probably on a Mac, I assume, right?
Yeah, I'm on the Mac. And first of all, I had to navigate to releases, release 2.1, which the link brought me to the main screen. But yeah, I got there. I got downloaded the app.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
You have to control click it to open the app as well too. And so don't double click it, Igor. Control click.
Yeah, like it will ask me if that's Apple famous security.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, launching. Yes, it's launching.
Nice. That's the important bit.
And
did you put the config where you're supposed to put it?
Right. Where is the config, by the way?
That's the other file that's in that repository.
Jump back a
that's
screen there, Dominic.
too many files.
No, we need
guys.
that at the
Come on.
end, Igor, because we want to create our own system and point to that. And
Yeah.
I wanted to make sure you don't have to download Unity as well and then figure out how Unity works and how to work in
Now
the .NET project. Imagine that.
You're just threatening me. It's
Yeah.
just- this is hardballing again. And arm twisting.
Switch to your other tab, Dominic. Give Igor a hand there. Tell him where the config file is.
No, I found it.
You
It's
got
at
it,
the
you got
bottom.
it.
It says local config. Yes, very
Yeah.
descriptive. All right. So I downloaded in the same directory. It didn't say it's dangerous. It's promising.
No, this time it's not dangerous. It should just work.
Yep. All your secrets in that file. Can I look in the file? What's there?
There's an IP. That's about it.
Oh,
There's not much you can do with that.
Fine. Next time.
Yeah.
We'll get
Sorry
you
for
next
being
time.
so safe and secure here.
Yeah. Right. Where is my
So
Leafsteroid?
you up and running, Igor? Yeah.
I'll also save you from the port skin. There is no other port open. It's just 8,000.
Okay.
It's not much you can do with that server.
Oh, yeah, let me try running again. All right, cannot be opened. Cannot check. Okay. And run the time. Okay, fine. Open.
So let me just open that again, actually, because I'm already
Open.
looking with the user.
Yay, Leafsteroid is launching.
Nice.
I have a black screen. Loading in nice green letters. Is that branding? Green branding color loading? Yeah. Looks
Does it
like
move beyond that? Did you get beyond
It's,
the loading?
it's
Are
the
you
right
asking
size.
tough questions now?
Yeah.
No, it says they're loading. I'm satisfied. Loading. It's meaningful already.
Yeah.
I'll let it pickle there for a while.
Did you register yet for the game, Igor?
What? Why? It's just loading.
No,
You
I
can't
mean,
register in the game. We
have
got
you
to
played
get you to
before?
register
That's
at
I
a
wanted to
different
know.
website.
Did you play it at one of our booths? I actually can't remember.
Yeah, I did. I actually did.
So you registered for the game? Oh, that's amazing.
Yes.
So you don't even have to do it again. But if you had to, and that's what I wanted to show here, there's a little registration website that you can register and I just did that, but I just wanted to say a couple words extra. A new user. The team name and email here is optional. That's part of the booth demo where you can register. So that user is now registered in the game. You'll already see a couple of charts dashboard pieces down here, which are not filled out yet because it's a new user. But that would eventually be your personalized dashboard, which will be seeing filled in the end with player activity, with a heat map, and all kinds of other interesting parts. But that player hasn't played yet. So when I now go back to the game, and that's the user that I just created before, but I can also come over here. You just saw it appear here, the new user 42. When you're in the selection screen, you can, as you see on the bottom lower half, the corner, is you can just select the user names by clicking the first letter. It's also case sensitive to make it easier to jump around. So the uppercase N is my new user. And if you created the user after you started the game, just press R to reload and it should appear. So
did you get this far, Igor, so far?
No, mine is still loading.
Oh, okay.
It's
We'll
getting
spin
boring.
back and we'll
have a
help
look
you.
at that.
Yeah.
So the game itself is very simple. It's just a top-down little bit of a shooter. There's some upgrades that you just saw running through the screen. There are some enemies that look dangerous. It's all very simple. To move around, you can use the WASD keys. You can rotate using the left and right button. And then using the left and right arrow key is what I mean. And then shoot by using either the up arrow key or the space bar. And then all you have to do is basically go around here and shoot some things, collect some power-ups. Maybe collect another one, get a bit faster. The interesting part about the game is, as I said, not the game itself. It's just something to consume and produce data. And one of the or multiple of the things that we've seen in the architecture before that I received are going through the REST service. One of those is obviously the event that you saw earlier. That's something that is configured in the backend. The other thing that's configured is literally the config of the game itself. So the amount of time we play, which is set to 60 seconds, you might have noticed that in the beginning, the amount of damage that the bullet does, the amount of health points that those pellets and boxes have, all those things can be configured and get loaded at the moment the game starts. And in the end, when you're done, we save a recording back to the server. So let me just get out of here. We don't need that anymore for now.
Cool. So you, Igor, I think you're still stuck on the loading screen. I think that's
right.
the config file, right? Dominic not in properly?
I assume that's what you did, Igor, yeah.
Well, I'm lazy, so I left everything in the downloads directory, and I'm launching the app from there.
Yeah, that's why it doesn't work. Okay.
Okay, you want me to do extra steps?
He's not reading the instructions.
Yeah, you're not getting a free breakfast here, Igor. You
Who reads the instructions? Nobody
Igor,
reads instructions. Come on. Instructions are there for not to be read, right? Not to be read, right? Instructions, right? Skip, TLDR. That's what they mean.
Yeah, they should really be called "Don't read me" because nobody.
That's
ever
right.
does,
right?
Yeah,
that's what it means.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Fine, I'll go to the instructions.
Well, before we dig in further, Dominic, let's get Igor working. So he has something to reference. We've got some more players.
You have to wait for him. And
oh my God! Do you have to put it inside the directory?
Yeah. So let me see. I mean, I'm on a Mac, but I'm not on a Mac, but I can still download it.
And I have to go back contents where.
You see, everything is a little more complicated on a Mac. Like Windows and Linux, it just works, and on a Mac, it's just like.
Okay, contents inside of contents. Okay, I'll put inside of contents.
So if I click the right thing, if you extract it here, for those of you who are on a Mac as well, you have to get into the .app folder, which you do by right-clicking and then show package contents, and then there's a contents folder, and this content folder is what needs the local config. Igor.
Select the current event. Wow.
There you go. Look at you.
MongoDB livestream.
Perfect.
MongoDB TV. Connect. It should be connect. QR code. Now I have to take out my phone.
We should share Igor's screen. It's a lot more fun to watch probably than what I'm doing.
No.
He's more entertaining. So that's while Igor is playing and making it hopefully onto the dashboard. We can maybe have a quick glance at how it's going to look like in the end, because there is loads that we can do with the data. So we save the recording, and part of that recording is that we save the statistics, how many bullets have been shot, how much damage has been done, but also the positions of those players. So the interesting part here, and if you followed what I've done, I've circled around in some kind of like, I don't want to call it like half circle.
A super random path. Yeah.
It's a really messy one, but I circled around somewhat with the starting location being over here. That's why it's a bit darker. It's a heat map. And then in the end, I guess that's where I stopped really moving around a lot and stayed more in one location. That's why they're also a little bit darker. And then we just show a couple of other pieces of information that might be interesting. It depends on your application that you're working with. As I said, it's just for this game. It's what I'm interested in for the players who played the game. It could be anything else. It's just easily configurable. And we'll also look at that in the end, how easy it actually is to set up a charts dashboard on your own. We got pellets destroyed here. We got power-ups collected. So it seems like I collected 3 player speed power-ups. Yeah, I like to be fast. So that's really good. Since that's filtered for just my user, the leaderboard is going to show just me. If I take that filter off, I'll just deactivate it completely, which I can do as well. And Igor eventually finished his game, then we should also see Igor here.
26 seconds.
Excellent.
And there seems to be someone who's like really good on the leaderboard.
Cheating.
Yeah. We know who that code stacker fella is. He cheats. Don't be put out by his massive scores, anyone who's joining us online. He cheats. We know this.
Yeah.
I think it's really important to point out, so we first built this for the Game Developers Conference in San Francisco.
Game over.
MongoDB is the, obviously developer data platform. And, for us, this was to showcase, as Dominic said at the beginning, it doesn't matter what the game is. It's data in and data out, but it's what we can do with the data once we have it. and the integrations that we have. So that's what we're going to learn today, is how this was all connected up, how it was architected, and how that infrastructure between MongoDB Atlas and AWS all benefits each other as well too. And we're going to show how, for example, this dashboard gets built really easily back on MongoDB Atlas as well through pure drag and drop. It's super straightforward. So now that Igor's managed to play some, not a great score, Igor, you're going to have
to... Fine. You can comment on my performance.
Did you do anything? Did you move around?
I'm not going to mention how you started like from prizes and games, and now we are learning things, right? That's a total bait and switch.
That's the whole point.
And now my score is low. Fine.
Yeah. But the beauty is that when Dominic is doing the first part of this setup, it's all back on Atlas. So while he's doing that, you can concentrate on improving your score.
All right.
Yeah,
I'll start by reading the instructions.
Yeah, that's reading the manual has never been one of our strengths, right? That's
not my fault.
Developers don't like really.
If anybody is joining the stream late, the game that we're building and everything that we're talking about on this stream is on the banner there now. So if you go to mdb.link/Leafsteroids, you'll get to the repo. If, unlike Igor, you actually read the README, you should be able to get the game up and running, and then you'll be able to try and beat Igor on his scores as well too. Total bait and switch.
Yeah. And don't forget to click tags and go to previous release. Just to
yes.
things
True.
Because things work. Things are always backward compatible, right? And forward compatible too.
You know what I'm going to do? Just for the sake of it, just so that no one can get it wrong, I'm just going to put it here. That's the 2.10 release.
Oh, yeah, you can go back. Come on. There are no
There you
bugs there. You just roll in the numbers. Oh, yeah, I'm working hard. Oh, another release is out. 2 + 1. Oh, 2.
Yeah, that's how quickly it goes. It's 2.10.
So we're going to do what all good cookery programs do now. We're kind of have a little bit pre-made, which is the game. But now we're going to show you all the secret sauce to how it was all connected together. And we do that by starting from scratch. You're going to clone this repo, Dominic, right?
Yeah, so I basically want to run everyone through what you can actually do to make this work. So if you clicked on the link before, you'll see there is deployment instruction to actually make the whole demo run on your side as well. So you can then start playing with it, experimenting with it, start to change things, learn more about MongoDB Atlas and the 2 services that we will be using in that case, which is AWS Beanstalk and AWS EC2. If you are familiar with Beanstalk already in the background, that means it's using S3 to put the archive, the EC2 that is running the website in the end. And then this second part is just using an EC2 directly to run the game server. The README describes everything. What we need to do, though, the first thing that I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a fork of the repository because we want to install something that's called an app services app to synchronize our configuration and make it really easy to set up the app in the end. So I'm in my own fork now. And then we'll just go, and I'll keep it open here on the side so you can follow along, make it maybe a bit smaller.
More instructions. I'm going to drop my mic. Echo buds. I mean, come on, it has to be scripted.
The problem with those mics is I can't drop it.
Yeah, but this one I'm afraid it's gonna break.
Yeah,
I need a proper mic to drop.
Yeah, you're gonna run to that back of that virtual data center that you're in at the moment and come back.
I'm gonna drop one earbud.
You made the right choice there. All right, let me put that over here. So the first thing that I'm gonna do is, if you just created a new account, the first thing, or one of the first things you're going to do, is create an organization and create a project.
So Dominic, where do people go to create that account first? Where are they going? cloud.mongodb.com, right?
Exactly. Let me maybe just...
For those of you who've never seen this UI and dashboard before, so you're going to end up here.
Make sure I'm not logged in.
Yeah.
And now we can just take that link. And I'm also going to post it in here to make it a bit easier for those.
Excellent.
Who actually haven't had an account yet, and then you can try free, because as we will see in a moment, the first cluster that we'll build here is completely free.
That's actually a good question. Are you using any paid features of Atlas, or can you run everything on the
It's
free?
Completely free.
Free tier will work. Awesome.
The free tier will work. We're going to use what's called an M0, which is the lowest or the smallest tier you can start with, and that's forever free. So, but we'll set that up in a second, so you can see that for yourself. That's actually what it even says here. The M0. That's where you can register. I just posted the link into the chat as well.
Yeah, so if anybody's keen, obviously, come on, as Dominic said, it is free. So yeah, mongodb.com/cloud, create an Atlas account, get up and running quickly.
Exactly. And as soon as you're in, the first part that has been done in my case already is you create an organization, which is really just giving the organization a name. If you're just playing around in the beginning, just call it playground, whatever you prefer. And then the second step is actually exactly where I'm at the moment. So you saw the projects of that organization. It seems like there is one still here.
Can you make it a bit bigger there, Dominic? It's quite small for perhaps some people.
Perfect.
Lovely.
That's better. So the thing that we're going to start with is actually creating that from scratch, so you can actually see what I'm doing here. And I'm really just working through the documentation here, so I can definitely recommend. If you want to follow, you don't need to do that now. You can do that whenever you want to. You can also rewatch the video, obviously. But since we're like blabbering a lot left, right, and center, that might take a bit long. So if you prefer to read, which I'm certainly also a big fan of, to just quickly read through instructions, reading has everything that you actually need.
Yeah, Igor's shaking his head.
Okay, Igor doesn't do that.
No.
Fine.
Proper developers.
I have another link. It will summarize it for me.
We'll get into the AI talk a bit later, hopefully.
Yeah, cool. Can't wait.
So I'm just going to give that a name, livestream MDB TV. There is going to be one additional initial user, which is me as an owner. I can add like additional users here. I'm not gonna need that for now, and that's what you're gonna see initially. The important part
you've no database now. You got to create this database.
Exactly, and that's what I want to start with. And the three things we're going to look into during the session today is data services, which is mainly the persistence part of Atlas, which is where your database is hosted. We're going to look into the app services, which give you additional features on top of the data services, like HTTPS endpoints, which is where we build our REST endpoint functions and triggers. If you're familiar with that term, it basically just means we're watching for changes, mobile sync and all that. We'll look at that into a moment. And then eventually charts is what you just saw for the leaderboard and statistics and stuff like that. So those are basically like the three main areas that you're interested in navigating. And the thing we're starting with is creating a new database. And I'm going to use the advanced configuration here so I can actually show you in detail what I'm doing. The first and important part up here, free shared cluster is what you want to choose.
Good. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. Free is always good, as well as
AWS.
As well as AWS. Exactly.
Yeah. There's two others there as well. We'll pick the one on the left. Yeah.
Exactly. Go for this one. So
Ireland. Go for Ireland. Go on.
That's per default selected for me. I'm situated in Ireland, so you can choose whatever you want. You'll notice that some of them can't be chosen for an M0. They are paid tier, but there should be something for everyone on every continent to choose from. Just choose whatever is closest to you if it's not already selected anyway. Now,
that's a good question. Does it affect the latency in the game if you choose something farther away?
For that specific demo, no, because the game, the way it works at the moment, is initially loading the events, the config, and the players. So there is of course a latency for that moment that you load.
Right,
so if I put the server, let's say can I choose Tokyo? Let's just Sydney. So if I was to put it to Sydney, the data has there is no way around physics, as our colleague John would always say. The data has to get to Sydney. I have to request it from Sydney, and then the data has to actually come back to me when I'm running it locally on my system. So that latency exists, but you will not notice that while the game is running, because while the game is running, for this demo, there is nothing happening. So you have a couple of GET requests in the beginning and then a POST request for the recording in the end. And
Yeah, you're saying you did not design massively multiplayer online game like as you
That's
promised.
version 3. So,
Okay. Oh, bummer.
but let me
I was going to take on Shane before his comments in a shootout.
No, but
fine.
I like that comment. It's actually great because we actually already have plans to prepare a new version of the game, which is going to be a multiplayer, multiplayer game. Once again, it's not about the game, but it's just to show how you can work with the data and the amount of data that is flowing and the frequency the data is flowing with. And the multiplayer game obviously then forces us to think about what happens with the latency.
Right. But it's a good question, Igor. I mean, I know we have a ton of gaming customers. That's kind of why we're interested in creating these demos. And yeah, obviously their games are much more sophisticated. With all due respect, Dominic, much more sophisticated than this game. Fair. So, you know, we can do multi-cloud, we can do a number of regions. There's no problems whatsoever there.
Yeah. And then from AWS perspective, we do have kind of different ways to deploy, different places to deploy applications. Like you have your traditional regions, then you have local zones that are more spread out. And we also have a wavelength, which is compute deployed into telcos data centers, which to give those wavelengths gives you the shortest path to a 5G handset. That will be the shortest latency for mobile players.
Yeah.
Cool.
That's actually pretty amazing. So
have I derailed your thought?
No, not at all. I really like it
because a mobile game now, and we're going to deploy it to the edge.
Yeah,
it's multiplayer. Yes,
it leads into what we're planning anyway. It sounds like it's set up right.
Yeah, we're going to pivot this demo live.
Start coding.
That's a good idea. Let's work on the next version right now.
You're a former mobile developer, Dominic. Shouldn't be no problem for you whatsoever.
Or did you lie on your resume again?
It's like the mobile part. You know, I'm like very far on the other side.
It was a mobile home part? Was it? what was mobile about that experience?
Right. Let's get back to
I was also traveling a lot, so maybe you're not completely wrong about the mobile home part.
Yeah.
But the thing is not.
It'll be close to you and I, Dominic, but Igor in San Francisco, a little bit further of a round trip for you.
It's not going to be too mobile. It's just going to be in Ireland for me. But the important part is you can extend that later, but for now we're going to start on that area. The additional settings you can just leave on the default. I just want to go into that part again. It's just like set up your M0, play around with it, use it. It is obviously the smallest here, but it is free to play around forever. And 500 megabytes of storage is actually quite a lot. The settings down here, as I said, you can just leave in default. There's something like backup for M2s and higher. There's a termination protection for your cluster, but for this demo, we don't need that. I also just leave the default name here.
By the way, the storage, you guys compress, right? Like when you store to disk, and it's not like one-to-one situation.
Before I answer that, can you help me? That's the. Do you see the fire hydrant in that picture?
And it's blue. I mean, this is disgusting.
Why is it the blue stuff here?
500 has to be red.
I'm actually inclined to say that's the only part that looks like it's from a fire hydrant, and I'm not going to verify. That's probably not going to work. So
if I were a dog, I would ignore this one.
That's so true. That's absolutely true. It's just
like this blue fire hydrant.
That's what AI is doing to us. That's probably generated.
Yeah.
And now it's actually asking someone who's real to detect the generated picture or whatever. I don't know. Right. So what was your actual question? Sorry, it's like I completely distracted there.
It was about compressing the data. The fact that the M0 is a 512 megabytes, it's super tiny what we have stored on the back end.
But it's not that tiny because the data is actually compressed, right? So it's not like half a gig. You get more. I don't remember the exact compression ratio that you get.
That the exact compression ratio I could not answer you on whatsoever, Igor.
All right, -1 to Shane.
You can do a lot. You can do a lot on M0. That's all I'm saying. We've got tons of startups doing proof of concepts and minimal viable products on their M0s, and so it's good. And look, it's a really good way to start, and you can scale up and down. And we have serverless too, if you want to go that route too. So
Igor, we already got a reputation. You see that?
It's a live roast. Yes. Let's roast Dominic.
We're not even in the live demo part, really. So the tricky part is later.
I would bring us all back to the fact that this is the inaugural Cloud Connect. We're setting the tone for all of the other cloud partners coming forward. We don't want to scare them away. Oh. Igor, we go back a long way. You've worked with all of us for a long time, hence the familiarity. So we do appreciate it.
Okay.
So, I mean, the good part is the cluster is already deployed because that is very quick. And we talked a lot. Two more things that we have to do, though, while setting up the cluster. We need to do them anyway, and we might as well do them right away. I need to create a user that actually accesses the cluster in the end.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to make this super sophisticated so
Yeah,
that we can remember it in a second.
This password. This will expire 30 minutes after this live session is over.
Yeah, that's why I don't really mind actually showing that.
Screenshot first, think later.
You don't even need to screenshot. It gets recorded. You can just watch the recording. The other thing is the IP that we need to set here, because one of the many security features is also that you can restrict which IP can actually access the cluster. I'm going to remove the one that I got right here, which is fine. And because I don't even know the IP of the server that I'm about to set up in a couple minutes, I'm just going to use the anywhere. So this is like a CIDR format of addressing IP addresses. That is, that's pointing basically to any IP that is allowed. So it doesn't really matter.
Block,
Huh?
It's a CIDR block, right? You're specifying.
Yeah. I don't know. I always say CIDR, but you can also say cider.
In America, we say cider.
Yeah, well, in Ireland, we say cider too, but it's a drink, you know.
Well, we drink it too in America.
Oh, look at that.
All right, continue.
That's amazing. So we created a cluster. The second thing that we're going to do, and that's the part that I want to get into that we talked about earlier, is app services. And app services is actually quite cool because you can now, you don't just have your database. Atlas is a lot more, and we call it a developer data platform for that reason. You can build apps on top of the data services. And I'm just going to click on build your own app here for now. And then talk you through the things that we can do here in a second.
And if you want a bit of a head start, we've a ton of templates in app services too. Yep. So if you can click on that template button and it goes in there, and if you want to build an iOS app, a React app, a Kotlin app, Xamarin app, they're all in there, so you can get started quickly.
And the guides that pop up here as well give you a nice little overview of some of the things that you can do. We got a web SDK, we got device sync. Those are the two features that we talked about earlier when it comes to mobile devices. You got GraphQL included here, the triggers that I mentioned, responding to changes in Atlas. That's what a trigger is doing. And then the endpoints, which is actually what we're going to use right now. So I'm going to close those. The ones that I mentioned would be the endpoints. And an endpoint is running something that's called a function, and the function is then executing the actual code that you want to write and execute on your database. Now, the good thing about this is if I scroll up here and look at the repository that we just forked, you don't need to set up that whole stuff on your own. That is completely prepared, so you can just like import it, and you'll see that there are several folders in here: auth and data sources, environments, functions, GraphQL. And if you look at the build side here, you'll notice that those correspond with those over here because that's just the configuration that's put in there. So if I go back to...
So that is definitely the equivalent of here's something I made earlier. So you're going to drop
exactly. So that's basically the copy of the system that we're running that you're hopefully currently playing on to get onto the leaderboard. And we want to basically make a clone to put it in here. And that's where this nice feature comes in that I explained earlier, something like an automated deployment. So if you go to Manage Deployment and then Configuration, there is an option to install a app services application into your GitHub. So am I going to jump over here? I'm going to choose my fork that I just created.
I need to work on making this compatible with code commit, because on AWS we have a similar service similar to I mean, it's a Git compatible repo code commit, but I don't
Oh,
see
yeah.
code commit there. Okay, mental note.
Yeah,
Oh.
we need more drop downs, Igor. Yeah, we need to get it in there.
No, it's actually
Shane, you sound bitter. I don't know why.
it's actually quite handy because it integrates very nicely with the other services, and we used it while we were developing the AWS Game Day, which is a Quest workshop kind of thing. Not going to go too much into detail, otherwise the stream is filled with that stuff. But I used it as part of that, and it just integrates very nicely. The only reason that this is on GitHub because that's where all the other repositories historically have been, and the consistency is probably the only argument. But other than that, I can really recommend Code Commit because it just integrates really nicely.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's just I need to talk to your developer team. Like, it's a Git compatible repo. Integration should be very similar. Just you need to get secrets and URL, etc. Yeah.
No, I meant like the integration with other AWS services is like even nicer if you use Code Commit instead of GitHub. So that's why I was recommending to use Code Commit.
Yes, because
sorry, that was not clear the way I meant it to.
There's code pipeline. There are other things like you can build pipelines.
That's what we also use for the game day, and it's super handy, and it just makes the whole setup like really easy. What I did here now, we're still in the step with the app services. You'll see a pop-up where you have to select the repository. That's what you just saw me doing. You could technically install it in the whole organization for all repositories or for your whole user. In that case, I used my own user to put the fork of the public repository, but I prefer to just choose which repository I wanted it installed in. So if you see the pop-up here, this has been successfully installed. You can close this. That's all we need. And we also need to authorize it, which should, if you're already logged in, and that's fine, should just work. And then the next thing,
you can see the accounts are linked there. You can unlink it, so therefore it's linked at the top, right?
Yeah, that looks good. And the next thing that I can do now is actually choose the repository, and that's where the interesting part starts, because what it does is it's basically a two-way synchronization. So whenever you change something in your app services, it gets synchronized as a commit to your GitHub repository, which means the changes and the configuration is always persisted as soon as you actually save those changes. And the other way around is the same. So whenever I change something, I create a new commit of the configuration, it gets using a webhook, it gets automatically deployed to your cluster if I activate it, which I'm going to do in a second. The important part is, that's why I need to click in here, Atlas App Services Leafsteroids again, which we saw earlier. I'm going to copy that path. I need that path here because the webhook that gets executed on each commit, or rather the function that is running to actually check what has been changed, needs to know where is the configuration. So I need to save this to say, all right, that's the folder where the configuration is in. And then I want to enable automatic deployment. So usually when you configure this to synchronize to your GitHub repository, you already started configuring an application. I technically did that. I created an application. I didn't really put anything in there like HTTPS endpoints or functions, but the app exists. So there is an initial state, a name that I've given, and the fact that I created an application. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to get an initial commit.
Okay.
Which is going to be reflected in, that's the wrong back button, going to be reflected in the GitHub repository in a second. There it already is. So
there you go. Yeah.
A new commit here, and now all our changes are synchronized. Now you might ask if that was not just like a little bit, maybe not what I wanted to do, because the configuration is now going to be empty. Sorry. HTTPS endpoints. There were some endpoints here, and there were some functions here. Let me just go back and get that one, because we're going to check out that in a second. So the initial commit that is made is just to make sure that the app services are actually persisted, which is important. But the fork, luckily enough, already contained the configuration. So the thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to revert that whole thing because I wanted the other direction. And I'm just going to make use of that GitHub webhook that I got here. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my, also a bit small, I'm going to grab my Git URL So
it's
big enough
good
for
to have
everyone
it
to
in,
see.
it's good to have it in sync, but we necessarily didn't want it to happen immediately there, but we can just revert it, right?
Yeah, exactly. And like it's usually the other way around. I'm just using that mechanism we got there anyway, and just synchronize it the other way around. So the first thing I'm going to do is clone the repository. There is maybe actually a good point to just mention that. So all the applications that we're going through now, the Unity game, the game server, the registration website that you saw, and the reason it's called Blazor is because we're using a Blazor server application. The charts configuration, the app service configuration, all of that is in here. That's why it takes a moment to actually check it out. It's mainly the Unity part. The rest is quite small. Configurations are just text files, so that should be reasonably sized and no issue. And what I'm going to do is, apart from a couple of other things that we need to do in a moment, like creating a package for the website to deploy and copy over the game server, the first thing that I'm going to do as soon as that checkout is done, which takes a bit long today, is to actually revert this commit here.
Okay.
And then what's going to happen is exactly what I just said. Whenever there is a new commit here, and a revert is still a commit, right? The automatic deployment is going to jump in again using the web hook, and is then going to deploy those changes.
So the way things are now, did the application get created in Atlas? If we go to application services, the app is already there, right?
Yeah. That's what I did. So I created the
application 0. Okay.
Yeah, and that's when you go in here. That's the initial screen that you see in app services. Your application has been created with a certain name.
Excellent choice. Love it.
An app ID. Yeah, I think application 0 is a great choice. So
yes, cannot go wrong.
Yeah, the default makes it easier to configure it in a moment, but you should obviously name that something more reasonable if there's multiple applications. I can recommend that. Other than that, that's perfectly fine.
So in the flow you have assumes main branches from which it point into production, essentially. So do you usually go main to production, or you have specific production branch to production?
It depends.
What's your favorite?
We can talk like the whole stream just about that topic. First of all,
fine. The commit is done.
I had discussions about
Let's continue.
Let's not derail the conversation.
But let's call it the blue hydrant moment.
Yes,
move on.
You
should make it a logo in your.
So I usually, for my personal projects, I simply have prod and staging and testing and whatever else branches I need. Because it just makes it easier in most cases to manage, because I push to that branch and then that's what it is. For this project, there is basically just one system that is running, which is the one people are currently playing on, which is running from the main branch, which is what we're using for the deployment here, which basically means that the main branch here is your production on that side, you could say, right?
Cool.
But yeah, it's a topic you can like if you ask 10 people, you get 12 opinions.
Yeah, but it's a demo after all, right? So we don't need to overcomplicate.
Yeah, sure. I guess Igor was just curious there, but it makes sense to think about how to configure those branches. But the nice thing with the deployment is that I can configure, if that, let's say the application here was a test environment, I use the test branch for the deployment. And then for the prod, I use the main or the prod branch or whatever it's called. So that's the nice thing about having branches as a configuration here, because you can configure that depending on your environment, which in that case, I didn't even choose. I could have chosen testing, development, QA, or production, but I didn't. So what I'm going to do here is the deployment from app services is what we see here. This is UTC, so don't get surprised if you are in a different time zone. That makes sense. That's 5 minutes ago.
Times are tough. Time zones are difficult. Let's not go there.
So what I'm going to do is basically just, that looks good. Revert development. See if that is, I hope so. Would be a weird surprise now. That is configured. So we push that revert. What's going to happen now is that the new commit, which is nothing other than like commit, a change, is going to lead to the webhook being executed. So now we're actually trying to deploy those changes properly into the application. This is going to fail. I'm going to explain in a second, because we have to do one more change. It's going to fail.
Yeah, see, it's proper live coding, warts and all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At least I know that it's gonna fail, and I'm prepared because there's one thing that we have to do.
But what if it doesn't fail? Then you're not prepared.
Well, then if it doesn't fail, that's okay too. So and the app ID was already updated. So
What is that old scouting motto? Prepare to fail, fail to prepare, or something, or the reverse, right?
So, that's how it works. Yeah. Okay. Sometimes it doesn't work on the initial try, but it seems like that worked. So I should have probably not said something that I knew is going to happen. But yeah, we're fine here. But let's double check the app ID here, because if we look at the configuration, that's the part that I wanted to show you by saying that we might need to adjust something. Yeah, we do, because that should not be this ID. So, because the application that I just created, that's fine. The application that I just created is obviously a new application, so it gets a new ID, and the ID has never been saved anywhere before. So what I need to do to actually properly deploy that correctly to change the application ID here. The other values here I don't need to change. So you saw the application name here, since that's the default name, and in the main repository it's also the default name, and I was the one deploying it before. All those values match up with what we want anyway, but the application ID is a new one. So I'm gonna just commit that right in GitHub itself, update Realm config. And some of you might have heard of Realm, our mobile framework, which is called Atlas Device Sync now. But don't get confused by this still being called Realm. That's where it originally came from. And that's actually where I started at MongoDB, on the Realm side. Used to be an engineer there, and now I'm coding over here on the other end of our sync. So that's that. Now we're going to go into the deployment again. That's going to start deploying. In the meantime, I'm going to show you the README again here so that we see where we actually are. So what we've done now, it's important, because otherwise you'll not be able to actually follow through later on.
So we have our new app, right, in the project, and we're making sure they're in sync, and we're connecting the app services next, right?
Yeah. And the automatic deployment here set up certain HTTPS endpoints that we'll need in a moment. So the config, the events, the players, we talked about that part while we were playing. And then there is something called post snapshot. We don't use those two at the moment. The post snapshot down here is to eventually save the recording that we saw on the charts. And then, as I mentioned before, exactly. As I mentioned before, the functions are the actual code that gets executed. The endpoints are just a configuration of what the route is. Is it a get? Am I going to get a JSON returned? And then the function that gets executed. And if I look into that function, I can see the actual code. It's quite simple, but I don't want to write JavaScript on camera. That's usually not a good idea. So that's why
we'll let you away with that this time.
We'll get away doing that. And I also want you to not have to do that part, so you can actually quicker set up the demo. But what it's doing in the end, it's taking our Leafsteroids database and taking the config to return that. And for that to actually work, we obviously need to do two more steps. If you look
at the database is blank, right?
Exactly. So if you click on, sorry, I might be a bit quick. So the main screen again, where we created the cluster earlier in your data services, if you click on Browse Collections. Collections are a container for documents. Since MongoDB is a document-based database, the smallest unit basically is a document. Just think of a JSON. A collection is a collection of documents, and multiple collections together is what makes a database. And now what I want to do is I want to create a new database. Leafsteroids. That's what you just saw in the code. That's why I have to make sure that it's called that way. So when you set it up, really make sure to copy those. You can't just name them anything if you don't adjust the app services functions. You can, of course, if you want to, but I recommend to make it easier for your first setup to have the demo running. Just do it that way. We're going to create a collection config and a collection events.
So these are the collections we need to run the game. This is where the data is
Exactly.
Either being taken from or sent to.
Yeah. And there are 2 templates here. And that's why we need to create those. So maybe just as a side note, when you start working on your application and you create data, you don't have to actually get into Atlas and create the database and the collections, everything ahead of time. It's automatically going to get created when you use the
first write comes in, right? It will just create it automatically.
Exactly. It's just going to create everything. The document, the collection, the database, everything is created. But for the game to work, we initially load the config and load the players before we even do anything, like post anything to the server or to the database. So we actually need to take that config, which I'm just going to copy here and come over here to insert a document. If I make sure you click the correct collection, otherwise that's not going to work. So config, insert document, you're going to get a pop-up. And if you click on that little icon up here, you can get into the JSON view of that. And I'm just going to remove all of that and paste the configuration, which you can see is really just a JSON into the insertion. To be correct, BSON for those who know what that is. I'm not going to go into too much detail because it's not a data modeling webinar. Just consider it a JSON for now. And then you'll see you get the configuration that we just saw. We played for 60 seconds. The rest of the settings you couldn't really see, I guess, like the health, you saw health bars, but you didn't see numbers. Yeah. But that's the configuration that we just used. It's just a default configuration.
And this would be typical of how, even those massive games, Igor, you talked about, they have to get configured from somewhere. It's also one of the reasons why we saw CodeStacker with such a high score earlier on as well, too, perhaps, right?
I was going to ask, where's the leaderboard stored? Which collection? I need to access to that one.
Wait for it. That's the collection that gets created on the fly, but you'll see that in a second. It's just like first you couldn't even start the game, and now you can't get it fast enough, right?
So we needed the config for the game to know how to play itself once launched, and now we need events so that we know where we're putting those players and storing those scores.
Exactly, and that's the event that we got here for today. I created a live stream event. For the main server, let's call it that way, or the main game that you're running it on, the copy that I'm creating here, I'm just going to reuse that as well, so we can see that later on, exactly the same way that I built it already. So I'm going to copy the code here, and now I'm going to make sure I'm in events. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to remove all of that, and I'm going to paste the configuration, which is MDB livestream.
So it's super simple. It's just an ID which is needed. Obviously, name can be anything. And the location, I presume, is just not to clash with any of the other events that we have, right?
Yeah, there's a bit more to that. It also has to do with the global cluster that we're using here in the for the main demo, which is like a higher tier, which we probably don't want to go too much into detail. But we chose a local cluster earlier, which is deployed in Ireland. You can also choose a global cluster, have multiple regions, and that's what the location tag is used for in that case.
Ah, I see. Okay, cool. Excellent. So we've got these two.
Exactly. So we got those two, and that's all we need here because that's what the game is requesting later on.
Okay, excellent.
And that's actually all you have to do in Atlas. So it really is just creating an app, connecting your GitHub, creating those two documents here to have the initial configuration ready, and then you're ready to go here. That's all fine.
Excellent. So we're done in Atlas. We're heading your direction now, Igor. Are you ready?
Yeah, we're 1 hour in. We can figure the cluster.
Did you actually expect that the three of us will be done within 90 minutes? There's always something to talk about.
Right, we're done with Atlas. Let's get going with the integration.
Things come to an end. This one doesn't seem to be.
That's right. As I've showed you earlier, every single application that we're using here, including the Unity game and the Blazor registration, is in here in the repository I've checked out. The thing I'm going to do now is I'm just going to create a deployment zip of the website, which is the Blazor registration. Once again, since it's not necessarily something that everyone might be using who's watching, it's not something I want to go into too detailed. Most websites will probably not be written with Blazor anyway. But if you wanted to, that insert didn't work the way I wanted it to. If you wanted to change anything and then deploy that, you could obviously do that. I'm going to use a fresh like deployment zip that I'm going to create here, actually from the repository that I forked instead of just something that's prepared. So we're fine here now.
So why did you choose Blazor then? So just ease of use, ease of deployment?
I'm a C# developer, so
we won't hold that against you.
Yeah, what is this unhealthy addiction to .NET technologies, Dominic? You need to double click on that.
It's just yeah, what am I supposed to say now, right?
Yeah, anything else? Well, unless you're doing F#, then it's okay. You're excused.
F# is now. I'm only doing F# when I play piano, but other than that,
finally, yes.
Or violin.
Performance. I mean,
that's
grand piano is in the background, right?
Yeah, no, you don't want. That's like 25 years ago. You don't want to hear that anymore.
And Igor, as we're moving across, and while this is doing stuff there, I mean, we could have you've got GameLift and other things over in AWS that equally could do this part.
Yeah,
of it, right?
potentially, yes. Yeah, there's like, I know a lot of customers develop their own game servers. AWS has created a product called GameLift that kind of help to do automate common tasks in the gaming, like session management and stuff like that, with player matching.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's something AWS offers. You know, Dominic, like many other developers, choose to develop his own server. I'm pretty sure Dominic spent probably 5 seconds reading documentation, despite loving the instructions and dismissed GameLift. But yeah, it is available for you, definitely.
Excellent. Well, now we're in a very familiar console for you now, Igor, right?
So, oh, yes.
You're home.
Warms my heart.
So, Dominic, what are we up to here?
So we start with the Beanstalk. I was just about to say it almost feels like a home by now as well, because I work so much with AWS that I feel more comfortable with that than obviously the MongoDB console. But apart from those two, yeah, and that's probably, Igor, why I only read the documentation for 5 seconds, because I regularly work with EC2s directly. But we're gonna use another service besides the EC2s as well, which we're just gonna quickly set up the website with. It's internally using EC2 too, EC2 as well. I guess that's better. But it's gonna make it easy for us because it takes over the whole the creation of the EC2, deploying it, actually running the web server. You don't have to figure out system services and all that, and that makes it super easy. So that's really convenient, and that's what Beanstalk is. I don't know if Igor wants to go into more detail onto Beanstalk right now, or do you want me to configure that first? You're shaking your head. All right, I'll take that.
I mean, yeah, you kind of got it. Yeah, you can do a raw EC2 server and just configure everything manually. You can choose some higher level service like Elastic Beanstalk, and you can for common situations like web apps. Yeah, it's great. Yeah. There are other. You could have gone serverless. You could have gone Lambda completely.
Yeah, exactly.
Lambda only. Again, probably you spent 6 seconds of that manual because you love readmes and documentation. But there's another choice. Like if you think of our compute, it's a spectrum. Like EC2 will be at the bottom, and then as you go in terms of how much serverlessness you get, then it will be Fargate. You'll be EKS, ECS, and Elastic Beanstalk is after that somewhere, and then ultimately it will be Lambda, where you're just managing your code. Here you do manage a little bit of infrastructure. So yes.
So I think that there are choices to be had, and each developer makes their own choices. So Dominic went ahead with Elastic Beanstalk here. So go through that setup then. So
yeah, I guess
Dominic, go.
you can actually. There's so many options, and I'm not even going to get into the pro and con here. So the first thing that I just actually probably did too fast, but you saw it. I just created that application with that name, and an application can have multiple environments. We're going to create a new environment. We're going to see some of the options that Igor just mentioned already right here. So what we're going to do is a web server environment, because we want to run a web application. That's what we're going to do here. We came from the application livestream MDB TV. That's why it's already pre-selected here.
Sure.
I'll give it a name. I just leave it on the default livestream Stream.
We're fans of default here, right? So
Oh yeah, I'm a big fan of defaults for demos.
Application 0.
You wanted application? Yeah. Does that work? I do that.
Domain 2 application
Consistency.
probably taken.
Let's see.
Righto.
Oh my God, you should take it. You should take
What?
That's yours. Go for it. Go for it.
Well,
No one
okay,
else did it.
like, that's okay. I like now we have to. There's like no way around that. It's a managed platform. We want to use.
Oh, look at the mini choice. .NET again. Oh.
Yeah. I mean, this hasn't changed since I talked about the fact that it's a Blazor server application.
Curious, how popular is .NET actually? Like on Linux?
It is actually a lot more popular than you would think. It's not as popular as, let's say, JavaScript, for sure.
Not as
but I would assume if we were to, and same happened to me, if we were to just guess the numbers in general for like web applications or in terms of usage for our drivers, to be more specific, you would be surprised that it's a lot more than you would assume. But as I said, like for web applications, it's not as big as Node.js, for example. That's for sure.
Makes sense.
It just from our like JavaScript and me are, we parted at some time in my life, and it's just
confessing to something, Dominic. There, we'll keep it a secret on a live show.
I made it my challenge to get through Pension without writing JavaScript. So,
well, here's the thing, right? So the Leafsteroids repo is open source, public. Yeah. Somebody wants to go and rewrite it, go for it.
That's the other thing. It actually is not even that hard. It's not that the website code, the .NET code is not that much. So it would actually be easy for someone who's
so
reasonably familiar to rewrite that quite quickly.
Yeah.
But for now, we have to deploy it on a .NET platform. We can use Windows or Linux. There is so much choice here. So with Beanstalk, you can run probably almost every application that I've ever written. I don't know. Maybe a couple of languages, but all the big languages are in there. So it's really great. The amount of choice
left short. Yeah.
Per default, we run on an Amazon Linux 2, which is great. The platform version, in that case, there is only just that one choice, but it's perfectly fine. You can just leave those on the defaults. We're just going to upload our own code directly. You could also choose, for example, from S3. But I got this. Where did I put it? Oh, that's where I put it. You know what? That's just easy for myself.
You're going to move it so you can find it.
Exactly.
Fair enough. Throw everything on the desktop.
I'm going to delete it in a second anyway. That's why I use my desktop always for stuff that I want to delete
it's just
away anyway.
Your global temp file, basically. Yeah.
No, because my you can. I don't know if it actually gets. I know it doesn't show. It wouldn't show, right? My desktop is always empty, and people are always confused about that because
you know what they say about tidy desktops, Dominic.
I don't work.
Warped mind. No, sign of a warped mind. A clean
okay.
Not good.
Okay. See, I told you I'm gonna get the version label. No, not application 0 again. So live stream. I mean, we could. Yeah, application 0, and then it's gonna give you the version number behind it. So everything's application 0 now. Now we see a couple of more configurations here. The first thing we need to do, the other things we don't need, we can once again leave the defaults, make it easy for us to get it started. But one of the things we need to do is we need to configure how can we even access the EC2 that gets created here. I'm going to reuse an existing role that I've already created, which is AWS Beanstalk service role. You can use the identity management service in AWS to create a new role. You can also just make it easy for yourself and create a new one right here. Beanstalk is going to take care of all of that. So that's super easy. One of the things that you need to access the EC2 is a key pair so that you're actually able to log in. And the key pair that I'm using here is one that I already created before, just for demo reasons. And then something that's called an instance profile. I'm just going to choose one that I've created before as well. But you can, as I said, you can also create a new one up here. So that's for that part. And that's basically it. I just want to quickly click through the rest so you can actually see the sheer amount of options you have here, which is really amazing. You could configure your virtual cloud right here. Then there is additional instance settings like public IP address, database. That part we don't need today. Got a different one.
So, one of our own, yeah. Shh, there are no others. There are no others. Quiet.
Yes, of course.
Like there are no other cloud partners. There's just AWS. And there's just one database, right?
Totally. Yes.
The cloud partners.
Oh, I like your T-shirt more than mine. My logo is too small because we've got all those controllers on the shirt, which is cool. But yeah. You can right away here. You can configure your. If you've worked with EC2, a lot of that seems probably very familiar. You can configure your root volume. You configure your security groups, which I don't need to do here either. It gets automatically configured. Auto scaling groups. I'm going to leave those on default as well. The architecture is 64-bit. The interesting part down here is T3 micro and small, so it's a very small instance, which is totally sufficient to run the website on. So that's fine as well.
Okay.
Actually, a quick question: is your .NET gonna run on Graviton? Because the Graviton is our like best price performance wise.
Maybe I actually don't know. See, that's the good part about Beanstalk. I just configured it, I run it, and you guys take care of the rest. That's the amazing thing.
Yes. But okay. Well, we'll not. It's mental note to try.
Yeah, that's
because Graviton is ARM, right? So the binaries for .NET need to be recompiled on Graviton. It might not be compatible actually, so that's why it's T3, not T3G.
Right there. But whatever I'm going to say now is just going to be guessing, and I might be wrong. So
that's okay.
I'm going to defer that into further research for us. But it's a good point. Yeah, it would be interesting to figure that out.
I suppose above all, you're saying you did some configuration to get started, but the rest you've just chosen the defaults.
Yeah, I just really did the bare minimum that I have to. Yeah. I have to tell Beanstalk what kind of application it's going to be. It's a .NET application. I have to choose some way to access the EC2, which we can also see in the EC2 list in a second. I mean, it's the same account. It's not like that's hidden. Yes. I see it right there. And there must be access rights, but the rest are just on default, and we're just going over it now to have get an idea of all the things that you actually can configure. Which the next one here would be CloudWatch, which is where your logs live, for example. Platform updates, email notifications. So all of that is from services. Not going to go in detail into which settings you can actually choose here, but just to get you to give the viewers an idea of how much Beanstalk is going to take over for you after it's configured. And in the end, the one thing that I have to do and almost forgot, because we need to add an environment property here, and the reason for that is
you need to connect to Atlas.
The website needs to connect to Atlas somehow, and it needs to know where that Atlas is, and that's the one thing that is obviously not prepackaged, is the way to connect to Atlas. And you can see the name here already. It's called connection string, and I'm going to show you what that is and why that
where to find that
works.
back in Atlas.
So if I go back to my Atlas, to my data services and my cluster, I can click connect here. There's a certain list of ways to connect, like Compass, which is an amazing tool. You can use the shell directly. There is a MongoDB for VS Code plugin that you can use. But above all, what I mentioned earlier already, the drivers. And if I look at the drivers tab, I can also choose which operating system, which language I'm using. Jesus, because we talk so much about Linux and Windows and everything, I get an idea of how to install those drivers right away. I don't need that part now because we already packaged and installed the drivers, or the other way around, installed the drivers, packaged it. So that's ready. But the thing that I need is what we call a connection string. And that connection string is basically a URI. It's going to tell us where or how to connect. Like, first of all, how with the protocol, and then where. Back here, I'm going to copy that.
You don't need to select .NET here. It's the same for Node.
Yep. The connection string is really just a string. So
it doesn't matter what's above.
It doesn't matter what I do here.
I know it changes if you'd like to change the versions, like for Python, for older versions, SRV is not supported, for example. Yeah.
If you, yeah, okay, you're right. If you choose like a really old version, you might actually get a different one. That's correct. That's actually a good point, Igor. Yeah, good thing you think about like people who are just like,
yeah, I don't read instructions. Like, I just click everywhere.
Yeah, the thing is, I'm always bleeding edge. That's like
we're a default settings only demo today. You know, we're not going into older versions.
At least for those parts where it's not like overly overly important. So you can leave it like that. You can choose the right way to actually access the cluster. And you'll see the one thing, just keep that in mind. Obviously, the password is not shown here. If you have multiple users, the user is also not pre-filled, but I only have one user, which means it automatically takes that user. Did I just paste it twice? I don't know. Yeah, that looks good. And we saw the password earlier. Who remembers? I spelled it correctly.
Who was paying attention?
Yeah, right. Pop quiz. I typed the password in the comments.
And that's the only thing that I need to define here. But this environment variable is now connected to, or like inserted into this environment. Injected, I guess is a better word than inserted. So if I want to review that again, but that's basically what we just went through: web service, MongoDB TV, etc., and then the settings that we just went over. I assume I've did that correctly. I'm gonna submit that. The deployment is now it's quite quick actually, but it's doing several things in the background. So the first thing that's gonna happen, or that probably already happened, is that the application that I just clicked on to upload as a file is just gonna get saved on an S3. I can find it there as well. And the other thing that's going to happen in a second, and that we need to go into in a moment anyway, is that an EC2 is spun up. Jesus. An EC2 is spun up. The application is going to get copied over. I actually don't know 100% if it's a system service that gets set up. See that there is the part where I just trust Beanstalk for that part, which is cool because I don't have to take care of it. I would usually use the systemd to make sure it restarts when that the website restarts when the machine gets restarted. I assume that's what's happening. But just imagine some configuration that has to happen, and Beanstalk takes care of all of that. But because of that, it obviously takes like a minute or two, which is still quite fast. So that's quite nice. And if I go over to my EC2s, it might
probably will see something starting up here.
Yeah, look at that. There's my application 0 already.
Nice. It's already running. Oh no, initializing status. Yeah, initializing.
So
yeah, it's not running yet.
A little bit bigger.
Yeah.
So there's the application 0, which actually is not really a great name because there's other instances in here, but it's fine. Yeah, that's great. So that's where our website is running on. We let that deploy for a second, and I'm in the meantime going to do the second part. Remember from our architecture.
Oh, we have architecture. Yay.
Yeah, we had that earlier, right? So maybe let's have a quick look at that. Maybe not a bad idea anyway. So currently setting up in the background using Beanstalk is the website with the registration leaderboard charts that we saw. So that part we let run in the background for a moment. And we're going to take care of the REST service in the meantime. And probably because I talk so much, it's already done anyway before I actually start something. No, it isn't. So the second part, we're going to use an EC2 directly and create a second instance. I could also put them on the same. It depends on what your application is, but I want to do that both ways to just show you a little bit what else you can do. And a lot of the settings that you just saw will look familiar in a moment. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to create a new instance. Is that still? Oh no, it's that one. Application. I can't use 0 now because there's a 0 already, so I have to call it application 1 just to make sure that Igor is happy with the pattern. Is that fine?
Yeah, there's some continuity. Yeah, I see that.
Continuity, right? So that's just giving it a name. Then I have to do a couple of things manually that the Beanstalk would take care of for me. I can choose Amazon Linux in that case. I'm running locally on an Ubuntu just out of habit, to be fair. So just to have consistency there and make it easier for myself, I chose Ubuntu.
You get some extra stuff with some certifications with Linux rather than Ubuntu. Yeah, and it's free essentially for you.
But so that's
we're all for choice. You have choice.
And it I've used it for other cases. It's probably the choice that I would usually go for if I hadn't a demo that was running locally on the same system when I chose that one already. So that's a great choice as well. That's also going to be a 64-bit. You can see down here the default is selected T2 Micro, which even has a free tier. So it's pretty amazing that you can actually. The whole demo is basically free. Because the T2 Micro has, I don't know how many hours there are per month. I forgot about that, but a certain amount of hours is free. That's really cool. And it's sufficient for the game demo once again, because the game server is quite small. Depending on what you need, you can scale later on. They're obviously, if you haven't worked with EC2 before, just to give you an idea, there is an indefinite amount of opportunities and
400 plus or something.
It's
types,
something for absolutely everyone. And
tell us all about those, Igor. Run through each of those individually. Tell us all about them.
Let me look into my instructions.
And there's like sizes or CPU numbers here that are just really fun to look at, like 64, 128, and that's small. You can have so many CPUs. It's
there's some with GPUs attached, which is awesome. You can try
true.
Which super expensive GPU for a couple hours and just abandon it, terminate, and you will be charged on it for a couple of hours.
There's some servers I wouldn't even be paid for them with a whole year's salary if you run them for a couple of days. It's it's a lot of fun. But that's the power that you get out of it is obviously what's behind that, right? That's absolutely crazy how much power you can get out of them. I've fought a couple of other demos and projects. I've run some bigger servers, and it's like super nice, smoothly, great performance. But for the demo, we luckily can use the free one, so that's great. The key pair that I have to obviously define to be able to actually log into my instance that gets created. I'm going to use the same demo key that I had before, which I already downloaded, got locally on my disk. We'll need that in a moment. Actually, you'll see that. And then there's a couple of network settings. So the only thing that's per default open and configured via something that's called a security group is SSH traffic, which we obviously need. Otherwise, we can't even log into our instance. It's allowed from anywhere. For now, I could also choose an IP once again if I really just want to make that safer. I'm not going to do that here. We don't need HTTPS and HTTP traffic for now. We're going to use a different, completely different port as well. We can use the default. We can use the default 8 GB. There are some advanced details that you can play around with that I'm not going to go into. Spot instances are also quite fun thing. Fun thing. I don't know if that's the right way to say it, but you know what I mean. To experiment with. And there is the summary down here, which just once again gives me a quick overview of what's going on, and also an option to spin up multiple instances in case I want to, which is also quite handy to get multiple at the same time. It's actually here. There it is. The first year includes 750 hours of T2 Micro.
Mm-hmm. There you go. You
So
got answers.
750
You scroll far
hours.
enough, you get your answers, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and if you have a small startup, there's like Activate program. They will give you more credits. So
Exactly.
you can apply for those.
And
MongoDB has a corresponding program too. You can get free
We
credits.
do, yeah. MongoDB for startup. I can't remember. It's quite a lot of credits and also some good level of tech support too.
Yeah.
For now, we only need one instance.
That was quick,
right? Yeah. Wait. Okay. We're not. It's not completely spun up, but it actually is like. It's crazy how quick it is, I think.
Super quick.
So the instance is already here. The instance state is still pending, but that's going to switch to running in just a moment. And that's what I mean by like spinning up a new instance, like loading a new image. There you go. It's already running. So it's pretty damn amazing how quickly you can just like start developing on something new. Now, if you go back to our documentation over here, or if we just know what to do, then we can see that the one thing that we need is obviously what I just noted, that the additional part that we need to open. to connect to our game server that we're going to set up in a second. And for that, we use something that's called a security group. The security group basically defines the inbound and outbound rules. And by inbound and outbound rules, we basically just talk about which ports are open in and out. The default is what we saw earlier. It's 22 for SSH, and outbound is everything for now, which is in most cases probably fine. The inbound part is the part that's interesting and that's important to keep an eye on. So I want to edit the inbound rules. I see the SSH rule here already. I'm going to create a new custom TCP. The game, we're going to start that in a moment on port 8000. That's just what I defined. You could do, you could obviously define the port the way you want to.
Why did you want to do it that way, Dominic?
Because I like 8000.
Aside from that?
There's no special reason really. It's
Okay.
I just wanted to use a port that's probably not in use to make sure that the server is listening on something that's like out of range. You got your I don't know where it ends these days, but you got your lower range of ports that you should not use. Is it like 1024?
The lower range ones.
Yeah, I don't know where the low range ends these days, but as long as you choose something that's like 5000, 8000 or more, you usually find that nothing else is running. So I don't know if that was your question or why it's
for those that might be wondering, you
okay. Yeah, I can't do 23 here. That's not going to work.
And you want to be above 1024 basically, but
I'm not sure about. Don't pin me on that number, but there are certain ports, like for example 22 is the default port for SSH, right? So you can't reuse 22, and it's the same with 23 and other ports. They are just like defaulting to something that is already used on that port, so you don't want to use them. You conflict, and you can use basically anything that's high enough to be safe. You could still conflict if I create a second service that's also listening on port 8000. Well, then you shot yourself in the foot, I guess. Right?
Then you have fun troubleshooting, figure out what else is listening on the port and why.
Two ports, two apps using the same ports. That's one of the most annoying problems you can run into. That's that part. So the reason, we just talked about the port. So the next thing that we need to do is, first of all, we're going to go into our game server here. When I look into what I got in my game server here, it's really not just much. In that case, maybe that's a bit more up your alley, Igor. That's a Python application. Is that better, or is it still not the?
I actually, you know what? Most of my life was Java developer, then a little bit of Scala, then Python, and a lot of JavaScript because I did a lot of web development, but like old school JavaScript.
Yeah. I started as a Java developer as well. Does it make it better now?
Some sympathy, if you're trying to bond, not working. Keep on moving.
I mean, at least we're in Python yet, and we're like a bit further away from .NET. So
I mean, Python kind of took off like in a data space, like data engineers, data scientists. It's all Python, right? Python, and in data engineers' case, it's all SQL. Developers, front end, and developers, software engineers in general, like it's everything, right? You guys use a lot of Go, I remember, right? Internally.
Yeah, Go is also quite.
Whatever Code Whisperer supports, I'm in.
we don't have time to get into that. Next show.
Don't get me started with that one. That's an interesting topic to talk about.
So,
are you going to be on for that, Igor? For the code?
After this show, if you still want to bring me in, I'm not so sure.
You are a friend of MongoDB TV, Igor. We will have you anytime.
You're the fun part of the stream. I want you to be on as often as possible.
We should try. We should try. Like this would be an awesome show. We have
I guess Shane tries to bring us back on track because we're like actually
back
longer
to
than
the
we planned
terminal.
to. But then again, it's a live stream. It's not a YouTube video that is efficient and short and quick. That's how it works.
Let's go.
But what I wanted to show you is it's really just a simple Python application, our REST service here. I'm not going to go into the code itself. That's for another video or stream. But the one thing that I need to do here, which is part of all of that, is the environment file. I put a template here so that you can see what it looks like, and I'm going to create an env template, env. I'm just going to copy that. Could have also moved it. It's the same thing in that case. And when I'm going to look into that, there's two things that are configured here. So if we just quickly go back to just making sure you can follow easily. If we go back to the architecture, so the REST service is what we're working on right now, but the REST service running on EC2 needs to know, how do I connect to Atlas, right? The same way you used the connection string earlier to tell the website how to connect via the Atlas drivers to Atlas. We now need to tell the game server running on the EC2 how to connect to the application server, or the application services, app services, in Atlas. And that is done by, over here, I can show you that first right away. So if you go to your app services, you go to your application, the HTTPS endpoints that we configured earlier, right? That's exactly what I need here. So this URL, and I'm going to copy the whole thing for now, including the route, but we're going to delete that in a second. So those endpoints all look the same. Not the endpoint, the base URL looks the same. And then the endpoint here is attached. That's why I can reuse that for in here. So I come over here, HTTPS endpoint URL. You see an example there. So the important part is basically just the app ID. The rest of the URL is the same. I'm gonna, that's not what I wanted.
Oh, you want
insert
to
this
copy
one?
all of it? Yeah.
I want literally the exact opposite of it, because players is what I not want. I'm going to remove the root at the end and just leave everything up to endpoint, which I said is like the base of our HTTPS endpoint URLs. And the other thing that I need is called an API key. So what you saw earlier with the configuration getting deployed to the app services like HTTPS endpoints and functions is saved in the repository. One thing that's saved as well is how we even access the app services. We turned on API keys. That part is part of the configuration, and that's why it's turned on already here. There's certain other ways to connect. We're not going to go into those for now because it's a REST service that's connecting to the app services.
Yeah, we have lots of authentication methods, but
exactly, API keys are one of the ways. And the only thing that's obviously not persisted as part of the configuration is the API key itself.
Sure.
So I'm going to create a new API key and need to copy that over here. New line at the end. And then I'm fine. So I got that new environment file. Now let me just close that one. So the other thing that I've put into the documentation here to make it easier, and I mentioned that down here, the game server setup file in game server. There it is.
Okay.
Code. Right. So what we want to do now, that's not what we want to do. So I want to copy everything that is in this directory. To, except for the git ignore probably. The if I do it that way, I also copy this one, so you get what I mean though. But the other files like requirement, the game server, the game service is what we're using to restart or use the systemd as a service. We're not going to configure that today. That's a bit out of the time limit, but we're gonna look into that at some other point. I'm just gonna use SCP here. That's finally the key that we saw twice already that we have to use. The default user, if you create an EC2, in case you don't know, is always called Ubuntu. When you create it with Ubuntu, obviously.
Yeah,
and
the only thing that with Amazon Linux. Yeah, EC2 user with Amazon Linux.
So the only thing that I need to do here is go back to my EC2. There we go. First of all, I can look into my instances now and should see application 1 is running now. Good. I'm going to take this. Sorry?
Yeah, no.
Oh, yeah, okay.
I like to see all the green run-ins.
Oh, yeah. They're amazing, right? There's other stuff that's running here that we don't need for now, but I insert that here, and I'm just going to put it into the home folder, which is empty on a new server, so that's fine. To confirm this, obviously.
So this is your super sophisticated packaging and deployment process, right?
Yeah, not a lot of
it's
CI/CD going
quick,
on here.
quick and
now,
manual
is
for
it?
the demo. It's fine. It works a bit different. There is, and I should probably mention that just before I forget it, I'm going to quickly show you. So if you go to the, and it really just takes a minute. So there's GitHub workflows. So the deployment for the game server and for the website has a YAML file here. So if you want to configure your own GitHub repository to automatically deploy all that, which would take away the fun of actually looking what we're doing, you can do that, and it would just like completely automatically deploy everything: app services, game server, website. It's all fully automated, but that's, as I said, the CI part takes away the fun. Takes away the fun of actually doing it. And the only thing that I additionally need to copy over, you could also do that in one command, I know, but I want to make it explicit. Or for those who don't know, that the star doesn't copy the hidden file. And so that I don't forget to actually create a such file, I should have probably removed the old IP right away, but it doesn't matter. We can just take that one now, insert it here. And what did I just do?
Command not found.
That's interesting. Command not found.
You probably have some funny characters there somewhere.
Yeah, I think so. Where am I going blind now? Okay, then let's. I got my .env file. I mean, I see the autocomplete works here, so that's okay. Ubuntu at, and now I'm gonna copy that again, insert it here. Ubuntu, the joy of live demo. Let's look at that.
Okay.
And all of
sanity restored. Yay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's fine. And then I can log into the actual server using the same key. And then I put a couple of commands here. I'm going to tell you in a second what that all does. For now, I'm going to be stupid and not copy the IP.
Oh, install Python, yeah. Yeah, you need some serious CI/CD here. And actually CDK. I don't know. CDK is awesome.
Yeah, that's the other thing that I wanted to mention here. So the setup that I'm doing here, I've done manually because it's just like the demo once off, just configure it quickly. But the CDK, and Igor, maybe you can put a couple more words behind that, is one of the many great ways to configure things easily, because that's something that you don't want to do manually. I just do that to show you how it works and what we do, but you don't actually have to do that manually.
And you're like 80% there. You already captured the code. Yeah, CDK is, if you guys are familiar with Terraform and CloudFormation, specific more so CloudFormation. CloudFormation, you describe infrastructure in YAML, but CDK is kind of on top of CloudFormation. You're writing code, also, architecture is a code, but you're writing it in a language that is a higher level language, programming language like Python on JavaScript. I don't think .NET is supported, not sure.
Oh, no.
But Python,
Igor.
for example, sorry, I have to call that out.
You gotta share the love, Yeah.
No. I mean, we love .NET. You know what? But there is a project, CDK guys have a project where transply into other languages, so it's quite possible. But anyway, and you guys develop tons of high-level components. There is like simple Atlas cluster, like whatever you were doing today, the sophisticated clicking on the screen.
Yeah, right.
It can be scripted. It's like a couple of lines, provision Atlas cluster, and it just runs and provisions it.
Yeah.
And a lot of the stuff you were in this lovely instructions that you have could be automated, scripted, essentially.
Yeah, but we're kind of first principles sort of people. We love going the long way around things, but it works, and it's for demos.
Yeah. Well, it depends what you're demoing, right? Like if your purpose is to demo CDK in the next show.
maybe.
That could actually be a really cool episode. I would love to do that, mainly because I haven't worked as much with it as I wanted to, and I actually need to get deeper into that.
Now, this is awesome message and awesome colors. Ooh.
Yeah, I'm going to explain it in a second.
Ubuntu, I haven't seen this for a while.
To make sure it actually runs through. I have to confirm that. So what it's basically telling you, there's a new kernel available. That's the one message, and then it's a couple of services restarting yes or no, and I just clicked OK. to not restart that. But to give you an idea, just to quickly run through what I'm doing here, I just wanted to start it so it's actually running because it takes a moment. We need a couple of services upgraded. I guess I just did out of laziness, not try to figure out which ones in that specific image that I got right here have to be updated. I just updated them all. It's like 2 or 3 services that need a newer version than with the box standard 22.04 LTS that you're automatically getting. And a couple of those need to be updated. Then we obviously need Python, which is not per default installed. I'm going to set up a virtual environment, which is, for those of you who don't do Python, really just a container where your application lives. I have to activate that virtual environment and then install something that's called a requirement txt, which has the dependencies. And then we're going to use one of those requirements, which is GUnicorn. You could also use Flask. It's written using Flask anyway, but you run it using GUnicorn. And here is finally, and I keep clicking on the code, I'm sorry about that. Finally the part that we talked about earlier that's configured, and that's what I meant by obviously you could choose any part that you want. You just have to make sure that you also adjust this command, because otherwise it's not going to work. We want to run an application, we want to run an app, and it's called application. And what you see here is basically the important or the interesting output is down here. That's the server already running. So what we could do actually, we could come over here. We could leave that where it is. I don't need this anymore. I can come over here and I can use the IP and I can say 8,000 and I'm like,
I'm alive.
Great.
It lives.
So, so the default route really just returns the string I'm alive so that we know that's fine. Because it's unauthenticated and without talking to Atlas, it's really just, hey, is the server alive? We see the config here. That's the config that we put in earlier. You can now also look into the events.
So that means it's connected to the Atlas, right? Cluster
Exactly.
in the back.
That's coming from Atlas. And the reason, or the way we can see that it's coming from our new Atlas is, if you go into the players, we see an empty list. Oh, and that's the point in time. Let's see. Well, what does our documentation say? Look at that.
Yeah.
Right?
Documentation.
So, it's important.
Never gets outdated. Always up to date.
So the list of players in our data service is here. It's not just empty. It doesn't even exist yet, right? Because what we need to do, we deployed our application 0. Oh, that's great. No, it was application 0, right?
It's refusing to connect. What's wrong with that string?
Oh, deployment, create environment.
Hey, proper live stuff.
Yay. Instant deployment. .NET core application. Yeah, I think it's .NET problem.
Yeah, and one that I haven't seen before. You must include a file with runtime config json.suffix.
Did you? Did we ever upload any files? Application files?
Yeah. If you go to, I actually don't know if you can access it from here right away, but if you come over here, I wonder if some of the naming was actually a problem. I think the bucket is also...
It would be funny. It's going to be this cool application 0 problem.
Yeah. It's maybe it's actually going to bite us there. What is today?
The 29th.
Wait, something...
Nothing.
Probably means that we already got stuck before that. Interesting. Look at that. User spawn has a single .NET Core. You must include a file with runtime config JSON.
This is where I come up with loads of interesting questions to ask Igor while you're trying to bug fix this. So things like, tell us about vector search and stuff like that.
Oh, right? Yeah, vector search.
I thought you're going to ask Igor now how to debug that.
He's not in control of that mouse.
Go to the logs. Look at the logs.
There you go. Go to the logs.
The usual thing applies. Yeah, CloudWatch logs. But
so what do you want to do? You want to request the logs?
Yeah.
Sounds like a good
Let's
idea.
see, can we debug this on the fly then? So we've got the expert, we've got the in-house.
You know how it works, right? If it doesn't work, just create a new application in a new environment and try it again.
So I'm pretty sure you have another one up and running. We can just switch to that, right? That's
I mean,
for the live demos.
You could.
The baked pie is right here.
This is proper live. Yeah, I don't think we baked that pie. We did that
safety
pie was not baked. No.
Yeah, safety off, right? Safety pin out.
The only other server that's running is the one that we talked about earlier, where everyone is playing on. Even though I haven't checked the leaderboard in a while, so might as well do that.
Anyway, so vector search. You guys announced vector search. Leaned on your Lucene implementation for searching capabilities. I had a quick demo at the nyc.local event. I had like 3 bots. One bot was like doing just a large language model, so it was hallucinating very quickly, like providing gibberish. It's a technical term, hallucination.
Yeah, I know. I love it.
It's a funny term.
Yeah.
And the second one I did where I grabbed context from MongoDB Atlas using traditional keywords. So and I gave it to the large language model, and it was able to answer the question based on the context. But moment you switch the keywords, you change slightly what you're asking, it cannot find the context because it's a keyword search. And that's where a semantic search kind of comes into play, because there are no words anymore. Semantic search uses a vector. It's just a bunch of numbers. And based on the numbers, it finds similar topics, similar text, verbiage. And it was also able to answer the question, which was kind of cool. I used one of the SageMaker Jumpstart model to create that vector. And I just looped through all the records in the database. I used your free tier and the sample movie database.
Oh, one of the yes.
Yes, and I converted the movie description into vector embeddings, like embeddings vector with just the numbers. And then I did search on that. And you give it to the model. And it's called a retrieval augmented generation. If you want to be a cool kid, you say, well, I did my chatbot with RAG. And that's instantly cool.
I want to be a cool kid.
Yeah.
And is there a blog on this yet, Igor? Is that to come?
You talk like a boss now. Like the moment you talk about some exciting feature, are you done yet? Is it in production? Is the blog out?
Where is it? Yeah.
Where is it? Have we done yet?
That's what I get every single day. Shane is my manager. So
now
you know. Now you know.
Yes.
My boss is watching.
Yes, we're working on the blog. We're submitting the proposal. You guys just announced it last week.
I know, it was super quick. Yeah.
Super quick. I had a demo right on the floor. Like, it was nice. I noticed a lot of developers stop by. Like, not everybody's familiar with the vector search, because it's like semantic search. It used to be more of a domain of data science, but now it's spilling over into the development world as well. And a lot of these kind of generative AI applications will be involving these large models in context retrieval. It's kind of interesting space, because you have a choice of actually not training the models, because you use just one giant model that somebody else trained, spend their hard-earned dollars collecting terabytes of data and petabytes of data, and then hours of GPUs training the model. You just supply the context and ask the model based on this context. And actually, it's good because it prevents this retrieval augmented generation, prevents hallucinations, because you can tell the model there's a concept of a prompt, and actually there's already prompt engineering as a
proper job now, right?
I know, massaging the text. I'm at in San Francisco, the Data and AI Summit. Somebody quoted somebody else who said the coolest new programming language is English.
I love it,
because you're doing this prompt engineering and you're supplying instructions. So you can say in the instructions that if you don't know, meaning there was no context supply, say reply that you cannot answer the question.
Yeah,
which is kind of cool.
So I know, Dominic, you're trying to bug fix in the background there.
For the small font there, Shyam.
He was quickly trying to fix things while we were trying to talk over it.
You can continue talking in a second, but all I did was create a new folder with a new deployment, a new. I published the application again. Jesus, what's going on with my head today? So I published the application again, created a new zip, and that's all I did here. So I'm just gonna recreate this thing.
Okay. So are we caught back up? Yeah.
Yeah. You were done yet? Look at that. It's the managerial instinct. But people get promoted. They are like, I love it when the manager comes. How can I help you? Because you know what it means. You're slow and I need to help you. Or I'm not going to help you, but I said I will. And therefore I did my job. And if you need help, that's your problem.
Now you're going down a road we don't want to have on the live stream.
Yeah.
Welcome to Manager 101.
Yeah, when your manager comes, say, back off, manager. I'm working. I'm in the zone.
No, just maximize your terminal window. That's all you need to do. They'll slowly pace away then.
Baby steps. Yes. Yeah. Like with every new line, take a step back. I need my line here. It's manager. Go back one step away from there, and until you get back to your cubicle or office, and stay there.
I love it. I love the way that we can just ad hoc keep talking, and Dominic is frantically making his way around the UI, getting back to where we were. This is like when you're driving and your wife asks you, "Are you lost?" And you go, "No. I know exactly where I'm going. I fully intended to go this way all along. So this is what's happening."
But funny story.
But that's the good thing about like consistently working with the same tools. You're familiar at some point. So it's also a lot of fun to just know your way around the tools at some point. So
for those of you watching the recording of this live stream, watch this at 0.5 speed. If you want to try and
2.5 maybe.
What Dominic was doing
until it blurs with the speed, and then you get in the data center.
Yeah, this is we're just playing catch up here now. We're getting back to where we were, and with all hopefully a good result, right?
Yeah, let's look at maybe we can. I forgot. Can we tell the logs here, right? Or live logs?
I don't know if you can. Would I find them in the what you like? I mean, what you can do is you should be able to.
You request the logs.
Go to events, and that's where you basically see what's going on.
Okay, let's watch the events.
So we created environment starting. We used the S3 as a bucket.
So you basically recreated the deployment of your .NET application, right? And you're pushing it and created a new Elastic Beanstalk environment.
Yeah, just to see if I can spot any difference in the configuration if I missed something. But I've done something that. I also created a new deployment file. You could now argue that you should probably just change one of the two things at the same time. But it's quite easy to compare the two configuration and make sure they're the same. So I technically probably changed one part. But
now, when I was playing with Elastic Beanstalk, I actually used CLI a lot. I don't know if you used the Elastic Bean CLI.
I still have to. I mean, as you saw it earlier, there's some things I'm actually like very happily doing in the terminal just because I'm used to.
Yeah.
But the tools that I'm not regularly using, and the Beanstalk CLI would be one of them. I find myself looking up parameter names or just command names more often.
You have to.
And then I'm usually just quicker clicking on it in the UI. I wouldn't do that if I was to script it or automate, obviously. But if I actually just do it manually for a stream, it's also kind of like it's more visual. I keep hearing some people say that it's just like it's a bit boring to watch someone play on the terminal. If I could not just open like the GitHub desktop app or something like that.
You're a DevRel person. I forgot. You're not a real developer after all.
Excuse me.
Harsh words.
Well, but look, developer will not pledge affinity to point-and-click user interfaces for work. It's
we strictly do these for demo purposes. Yes.
Okay.
Full on terminal if we weren't doing it. This
guilty with explanation.
Yes.
But just to make clear, like I am a software engineer.
Okay, sorry, Dominic. I apologize.
All good, all good.
I hurt your feelings.
Yeah.
I promise not to do it.
James asks, "What about Godot?"
I give that to
Wait,
Igor.
we're still waiting.
Very obtuse answer. I get it though. It's good. It's good.
Can I actually retrieve the logs for that if it failed? Let me see. So, what's with Beanstalk here, Igor? Tell me.
Let's look at the logs. Command fail logs. Look for
Yeah,
details.
the logs
CDB
are gonna
engine
fail
logs.
earlier when I wanted to retrieve the logs. Yeah, okay, let's maybe run that. Wait until that's done because it's still actually in a pending state, which is obviously something where you can't just jump in. If I take the application 0 from earlier, go to the logs. We might have to log into the EC2 to actually look at it, or take up a backup solution, which is fine too.
Okay, which would be, I suppose, for the purposes of moving on to when we're nearly there, right? So
Yeah, it's just like
what way do you want to go?
I'm going to show you the way I'm going to go. Let me just move that over here for a second. Leafsteroids players. So what I'm going to do is the following. I'm just going to copy a document, go into my collections, create a database called players, which is what the website would do, our web application. And I'm going to insert a document, which is this one. That's going to get created automatically. This is me. This is going to be null, and the location is E. Now we got a player. Let's just see. This is actually don't need that part anymore. Where was it? Here. So I would usually now log into the EC2 directly, probably, and have a look if I can find the logs there. Igor, what do you usually do for the debugging if you can't even get the logs?
You need to figure out why you're not getting the logs. Maybe you forgot to enable CloudWatch logs. Then
Shifan says, are they in CloudFront?
I might actually have not. Yeah, you might actually be right. That might be the case. For the ease of getting through this, just imagine having the dashboard. That's literally all it is. I click on the link and it's just a different website that opens. Not this one. I know it was the registration that you did, right? Register. That's what I'm looking for.
Yes, yeah.
There are too many short links there by now.
That's okay.
But the web page that we saw earlier is basically what I would have had here. So when I click where's my Beanstalk? When I go into the environment that we saw here, just imagine I debugged the arrow down there now.
That would have led back there.
And that would have led to this site. And I just created a user called Dominic. I can't do that here because the other site's going to tell me that already exists. And that's what would have led to what you see here in my. Still, this is the new the new Atlas instance here to user.
So because we provided within here, we created the config and the events, but because of this issue, on making the website, we put the players in here as well too, just to make it work and right.
Yeah, so I just manually added the document, which is the step that the website would have done using the drivers. But looking at the time, I'm trying to not live debug that now. You never know how long it takes.
Yes.
Which is fine. So we can actually just do that. Luckily, that step is easy to do manually, and that's okay, I guess, because now I can actually come back to my. Where did I put my?
It will be season 2, sequel 1. Live debugging.
We can also do a stream where we just look at the problem and debug stuff. I guess that can be.
But of course, it's going to be working then. You know how
it's always like it did earlier when I told you. Sometimes it actually fails on me, and then I have to configure it again, which would have been
That's okay.
but it didn't fail.
But yeah, the debugging. Otherwise, you do the logs, and if you like worst case scenario, you can SSH into that instance. Like there's a command.
That's what I usually do actually by
Yeah,
logs.
and you start
I just SSH into the EC2 instance directly and just like look
see
around there
what's running.
into the logs directly. I mean, that's all that CloudWatch is doing in that case, and the requesting the request from Beanstalk is effectively just getting those CloudWatch logs.
Yeah,
So
because
Sure.
you can hit things running locally. Like if it's a service, you can do localhost port and hit that service on the server, and that will point to like maybe your port forwarding is not configured correctly, and maybe from outside it cannot be seen, but inside it's still running.
Exactly.
That's a really big clue. See what other processes are running. Yeah, that's standard troubleshooting applies.
So Dominic, I know, where are we in our architecture now? What is set up? So
I have a question about the architecture, Dominic. I noticed a lot of these HTTPS custom HTTPS endpoints had basically GET. And I know you guys have data APIs as well. Like, how did you decide to not to use data APIs? Maybe, and you go the driver route. Any particular reasons?
Oh, I don't know if you want to talk about that topic. It's not easy to explain. That's the problem. No, I'm just joking. It's we have a lot of different choices, and the main reason here for using the HTTPS endpoints is simply that it's not just a simple connection where data is passed through. The functions do a little bit more than that.
Oh, you have business logic baked in there. Okay.
Yeah, I wouldn't say business logic. It doesn't go that deep, but there's some validation happening. When we return the stuff, you can sorting and stuff like that. You can call business logic, I guess. But it's not like overly complex. And that's what the functions are great for, because you can just adjust them a little bit to what you need.
Right.
And have that basically as part of your app services, which you would usually do in your application directly, if that's something you can do. Security is obviously an important part here, and then using the drivers or the data API. But the server-side code that I wanted to run here is the reason that we chose the application services, the app services.
Yeah, because with data APIs, you just get basic CRUD, and that's it. There's nothing else.
Right.
There's no customization.
It's basically like GraphQL, right? In a way. It's going the same direction. So
or GraphQL. Yes, you could have used GraphQL.
Yeah, I could have just used GraphQL.
That's right. You would have been an even cooler kid. Just GraphQL.
All the cool kids on the block.
Yeah,
right?
They have vector search and GraphQL. Yes. Or they can say CRUDL. CRUDL is with a list.
but I mean,
yes, I've heard that one too.
I actually never heard that before.
I've heard CRUDL. Yes.
Fundamentally, you're right, though, Igor. Right? There's lots of different ways that this could have been done. This was, in this architecture, that it could have been done different ways, definitely. And above all, you have choice. So I suppose that's one of the key things for us: the drivers, the data API, lots of other ways to connect.
Yeah. And Igor, you asked earlier about where we are in the architecture. So that's basically the part that we just skipped a little bit, I guess, for the purpose of saving ourselves the time from actually debugging this.
So the left-hand side of the brain, the architecture is where it's functional. So, but the right-hand side is the one where the patient got damaged.
And, here this part seems to have a little bit of a trauma there.
Right.
When we do the outtakes of the Cloud Connect show, the debugging of that will be in the outtakes, or the extended DVD edition that you can purchase at a store near you.
$5.99. Yes.
Just to quickly go over that, where we saw that empty list earlier. I see the team now. Yeah, the team. Yeah. Just because I read team name here. I see the player now. And I only get that one player, so that's from our new server. That's fine. You can also, by the way, just because I just remember what you can do here to see what's actually happening. There's logs down here, and then you'll see I called those endpoints, config events, and then the players, which returned empty. and then the players that I just called again. So see also timestamps. Remember, it's UTC. No, that's actually not true. Those are my. I know we are UTC at the moment. So there you go. The second call is the one that just returns something. Time zones is just such a time-consuming thing, isn't it? What I did here by copying the IP and reaching out to the server is also something that I need to adjust here, and that's basically the final part. And that's to come back to that, the whole reason we had that config in the first place, and you had to put it into your own folder, because I'm going to substitute that now. And when you deploy that demo on your own, that's basically the only step, the only change you need to do for the game to work, which is why it's exported into a JSON here, so you don't have to actually work with the game itself. So I just update the IP here, save this, close it, and then the game should, if I run that again, run on the right screen. Should be loading now. It's still going to show me the MDB TV live stream because we just copied and pasted this event. Now only going to show me one name, which is like, that's a good start, right? So it looks like it's getting that data from somewhere else.
One way to eliminate competition by not to introduce competition.
Yeah, right. I just created my own game and my own server, and now there's just one leaderboard.
Let me guess who's going to be on number one on that leaderboard.
Yeah. It's like Sesame Street. One of these kids is doing his own thing. He's just made his own game with himself as the only player.
Yeah,
so he can kill the leaderboard. This
game is rigged. Truly.
Is it though?
Talk about an Easter egg. This is a built-in Easter egg. In fairness, he's pretty good at playing it, though. Look at that board
look at
maneuver.
some strategy going. Look at that.
You need to spin around.
Hey, you want to collect the power-ups first. I don't want to spin. I want to shoot
you need to point it
direction.
45 degrees?
Direction.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Wow. We are using this game at MongoDB and partner events, so take some cues from Dominic. Go collect the power-ups first. Don't worry about spinning and moving. Move around the board, get the power-ups. That's where you get your big scores. Look at that.
Hey, you never mentioned there were power-ups.
That's what the initial tutorial is for.
How do you think he's getting 7,000?
You don't read. You don't.
I
watch
bet it was in the
tutorials.
instructions.
What do you
Yeah.
Like,
read the instructions. There were power-ups.
So the power-ups increase your bullet distance, the damage of your bullets, and the speed of your bullets. So that's the way to go.
No, you guys are telling me. Game over.
Yeah.
All right, let's look at the leaderboard.
Wow,
there will be a score, right? It's not just Dominic like number one. There will be like some kind of score. Maybe Dominic broke his own personal record.
Yeah, that's what it is. Oh no, wait, I was already correct. So we go back to our project. And there's a couple of things we can see now that we can work with. First of all, one of the things that I mentioned earlier, which is the recordings that get created on the fly. So there's nothing we have to do here. We just create them by inserting new documents. And there is something like a session statistic that we'll look in a second into charts. There is the player again, which is me. The snapshots, which we'll also look into the charts, is really just a collection of player positions, which is X, Y, and Z, or Z, depending where you are. And the event is part of that as well.
Is it captured as one object and then sent over when player is done? Or is it continuously shooting coordinates?
No, because for the single player version, we only needed one connection or one moment where we save it. That's fine. As I said, it's just a demo anyway, so it all depends on the application you're creating. In some cases, that might be the right choice. In some cases, it's the wrong choice. It all depends on the scenario. But in that case, it's a once-off. In the end, it's one post. The other thing is what I mentioned earlier. As soon as we turn the whole thing into a multiplayer game, most of that stuff doesn't work that way anymore, because the reason why it doesn't work or why it can't work is at the moment, the client is basically telling the server what the result is. So for example, the client is sending back a replay telling the server, hey, I was in this location and that location. Now, the first thing you would think of is cheating, because that's very prone to someone actually sending data that is completely different from what happened. So as usually in a game, the client doesn't make a decision about anything. The client is just telling the server, hey, that's what I'm doing. And the server is making the decision what that outcome is of that. So the client is telling the server, I'm moving this direction with that amount of thrust and angle and whatnot. And the server is going to tell the client, okay, that's where you are. Because otherwise the client could easily be used to cheat, right?
Yeah.
So the gaming architecture, I guess, is not necessarily. Yeah, and it actually leads into what I said before. It's not supposed to show games or gaming or how to properly create a game. I'm not a game developer after all, as much as I'd love to. But by looking at the game, you can probably tell it's a bit simple. So it's just supposed to be. And
from MongoDB
it's maybe a good point for those out there who want to go into Unity development. Use it as a starting point if you want to, but please don't use it as a reference architecture for game development.
Don't bet your money on it. But from MongoDB perspective, you support both. You can accumulate the data in the memory, flash it once, or you can continue. Actually, technically with Realm, you could continuously synchronize the stuff, right?
With all of those options. So what I'm going to do is when I create the multiplayer version is you might just use the HTTPS endpoints here from a game. Let me go to the architecture to make it more clear what's going to happen. So as soon as I turn that into a multiplayer version, there obviously needs to be a continuous communication to synchronize the positions of all players and in which directions they're shooting, etc. So that's what that REST service is going to be, that the EC2 is going to be for. At the moment, it's really just a simple REST service, offering a couple of gets in the beginning and in the end, offering a post, and then talking to the Atlas App Services. As soon as we turn that around, that is going to be a bit bigger, and it's probably going to be a WebSocket connection or something like that, which is quite typical in these real-time scenarios, which is then communicating with the game in a continuous way. And that's just one of many options. As soon as the game is over, the accumulated data here in the game server is then going to get sent once again with a single request to the HTTPS endpoint. So if I wanted to come back to this one, I could leave all that the way it is. But the point where all the data is collected has to be moved in here because there's multiple clients up here. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Perfect. So that could be kept the way it is. You could also do it differently. You could also have use other ways to actually put the data into Atlas using the drivers, etc. And you would do continuous calls. In terms of efficiency and performance, that's probably a good question. How that should be modeled. Maybe we can actually at some point also do an episode about that and maybe talk to some of our gaming partners and have Igor on the show as well. So preferably a gaming partner that's using AWS and MongoDB, so we can both talk here. That would be fun. It's super interesting, and a lot of that transfers to other applications as well again anyway. So it's performance and efficiency is obviously not just relevant for gaming.
So you're in charts at the moment. You're going to show us how you've showed us at the beginning the charts that is produced. You're going to show us how quickly and swiftly it is to gather that once you have the data, albeit single player Dominic and his high score.
Yeah, it's going to be the data. It's going to be a bit boring. I can play a second game, but it's not going to be a much difference, I guess. But yeah, let's quickly look at how that actually works. So let me go back here first. Basically the overall or the highest level container, let me call it that way, that you got in charts is a dashboard. You can create multiple dashboards. We might have seen that earlier when we looked at, where did I put the tab? Here it is. When we looked at the dashboards over here in the other project, and what I got here is just a dashboard that was already created, and now I can add a chart. So all those small tiles are also called charts to the dashboard. And the one thing that I have to start with is obviously I have to choose what I'm even creating a chart for. All right.
Collection. You picking collection, or you have some sample layouts? Okay.
No, I'm just am I still in the right?
In the right project?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
Chart. You select your data source, right?
Strange.
And you're
Yeah,
going to
it's there now.
select your collection.
Sorry about that. Now we got the recordings. That's probably the first one that's interesting for us.
It doesn't like that one though, does it?
No,
No.
I don't know what's with the recordings. Let me just look at that. So there we got the recordings.
Yeah, we had one object there, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's one object.
is
That's
there.
fine. I got that one open on the side. Leafsteroids again. And the no. Oh, it's already showing no documents though.
Sample and data source. Yeah.
There you go.
Strange. That was a little bit of a hiccup there. I'm sorry about that. So the interesting things that we can look at now are the recordings. The other collections are not as interesting, I would say. Let's maybe start by. I obviously want to see myself on the leaderboard, right? So let's start by using a
It
table.
automatically pulls the fields, right? So it's really drag and drop for most people creating.
And that's the cool thing about it. So in the fields area on the left, you got everything that is part of the document. In recordings, that's how a typical document looks like. We just looked at it, so you saw the player. So for example, I could have the names here, the nicknames.
Mm-hmm.
Then
Dominic,
obviously because it's a leader.
Yeah, exactly. Dominic. He's everywhere.
Yeah. Oh, you can get a score. Let's see his score now.
That's how it should be. Then I can choose a grouping first, which is by player. The second one is values. You can choose how you want to aggregate that. It's just one game anyway, so it doesn't really make a difference. But for the sake of like doing
if it was a proper leaderboard, it was just max, right? Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So I just wanted the high score of every player, and then it also gets sorted by that. Now the cool thing is, or I keep saying the big cool thing because there's so many cool things in there. First of all, let me maybe give that a name.
And then hold on, we needed to aggregate because you player Dominic had multiple sessions, right? And they had.
You could have multiple sessions, and I want to choose what I want to visualize out of those sessions. I could do the sum. I could do count.
Right. But the reason you had to aggregate is because the score is in some sort of array, right?
No, because it's in. Yeah, I don't know if you would want that called array in that case, because it's a collection of documents which contain scores. So if you wanted to, you could put all those scores into basically extract it and then build an array of those scores.
Yeah, sorry, I'm not familiar with the schema here, so I'm kind of like
guessing. Yeah, no, that's fine. That's fine.
Because like if it was player score, why do we need to choose max? Because every player has one score, but
it's an array of scores. That's why
it makes sense. It's a scores,
and that's why I want to choose the highest one.
I mean, if I would choose min for Dominic, max for myself, of course.
See, the good part is
that's only fair.
You can choose min, and I'm still 10,000 ahead of you. I think you had 950, right? There you go. But jokes aside, the leaderboard has a minimum score per player. Let me just put it that way. You can obviously take whatever description you like. Now I want to configure that a bit better so that it actually looks better. And the player name is one thing that I'd like to override. I want to just call it name. There you go. And then we got the label. It's just going to be score. There we go. The other thing that I probably don't want is the column totals down here. And I'd say that actually looks quite fine for a leaderboard. Imagine there's multiple entries here.
Do you have like an order by score overall somewhere?
You can click on the element when it's done. So
yeah, you can sort.
Oh, yeah, you sort already on the UI.
Yeah.
Oh, awesome.
And that's the nice thing. It's not pre-sorted. You get the option to just do that here. You can sort name
for any. Unlike the reason my score is below Dominic, you can just flip the sort order, and I'll be at the top.
Yeah. Whoever's on top wins. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the game. Yeah, how do we do this beautiful heat map? Is that
That's going to show you in a second. I just wanted to show you what like you can sort that here, but the other thing that you can do is you can also, let me make that bigger because we don't need the README anymore. You can also come over here and filter. So you could also filter that down. The whole dashboard is going to be affected by that. And that's quite neat to just get
the
the
most
data.
important piece of that new leaderboard is that I only played one game as well too, and I still beat Igor. So this is important. You know, this is
oh my God, 1275.
I played that while we were live streaming.
Maybe you will not get an acceptance for the next invitation if it's Bash Igor session.
Yeah. Good luck in me getting a ticket for reInvent then. So yeah.
Your reInvent session will be accepted. Yes.
So you want
to look at that heat map. Yeah.
You want to look at the heat map. So
yes. Heat map is awesome. Yes.
We choose heat map. Which parts that we're interested in heat map
makes no sense why it's a heat map, because heat map usually has like X, Y, and some kind of value. But here you have just coordinates, right?
You also got a value. You just didn't pay attention.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah, the x-axis is X. The y-axis is not Y, it's Z. So it makes sense. Wait for it. So X and Y is because we draw it in a two-dimensional coordinate system, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we talk about X and Y. But in the game, the player, if you remember, I don't have it open right now, doesn't matter. You move on a plane, and the y-axis is always going upwards. And we don't move up and down. We just move left, right, front, and backwards, which is the z-axis, which is also a good thing that we have that mapping here because we need to remap it. So X and Y are X and Z, or X and Z are drawn onto X and Y, however you want to look at it. I don't want to go too deep into what all of those mean, but unwind array is what we're going to use, which is basically just, as it says, going to unwind the array of X coordinates here to draw them. Mm-hmm. And then I'm going to take unwind here as well.
Yeah, now it basically transposes the array.
Yeah, thank you. That's the better term. The X and Y is defined, but now I also need to define some kind of intensity.
And your intensity will be constant in this case, right? Because
the intensity is not constant. The intensity is how often this event happened. And I'm just going to use the ID here, which gives me each ID exists only one for each document, right? The IDs are unique. That's what I'm trying to say. And by choosing that and then adjusting one thing that is called bin size, I get a better picture of what I just did in that game. So this doesn't really look like a heat map yet. I mean, it looks kind of like a heat map, but it doesn't look like what I just did in the game there. The bin size default is 10, so every 10 elements get binned into 1. So what you have to do is you put that down to a 1.
So it will be more granular.
Exactly. Right. Then it's more granular, which makes sense because like one unit in Unity is usually like the default unit that you use for a movement, and the player is roughly 1 unit wide and 1 unit, like it was a circle anyway, you saw that. And that has a diameter of 1. And that looks a lot more like something that is moving a lot in different directions.
That was your path in seeking all those
exactly. So I was going along a wall here and there, as it seems. The initial one is, let's see, where is it? That's 0, and 0 is here. So that's the starting position. I went down first. Get the power-ups. So the darker ones are probably where I stopped for power-ups for a second, and then I just like kept moving around.
I can imagine my graph. It would be like circling in the middle.
Just like scared of everything.
Scared of everything.
So I know this is only your play, Dominic. The beauty of this for, say, game developers, for example, would essentially be if you were creating a maze or a path, or you're essentially playing level, that you could see with this data that you get back from the players, are people making their way through all of the levels, all of the areas, the hidden areas? Are they not finding them in the first place? So this is, has value. Single player here, definitely. But imagine this was, tens of thousands of players. You could say, well, okay, nobody's getting to the play area up on the top left, perhaps. Maybe we need to make that level a little bit easier.
Yeah, and that might once again sound like it's just for game developers, but heat maps are used in many different areas. So one of the things that just came to my mind is a friend of mine worked in that area, in the retail area for a while, and they did a lot of analysis about where customers move in the store with loads of different sensors. And you could also draw a heat map of where are customers in a store most of the time, where don't they really spend any time, to see which areas are not really easy to reach, something like that. It's just like one of many examples. You can think of many different ones. None of the elements of charts, nothing really about Atlas in general is gaming specific. That we've just like just of the things that we've seen today is gaming specific. It just happens to be a demo that's like nice and easy to show, and makes it easy for us to just have a quick look without having to understand complex business logic of some other demo. We could just play one round, but all of those have application in other areas as well. And the cool thing is about charts, it's like, and actually I'm a really big fan of charts myself, that it's so easy to just quickly drag and drop a couple of things that you need, and you can visualize your data, and then it even gets updated.
That was my question. How often?
You can do that the way you want to. You can say infinity, so there's like no range. I usually go to a minute because I like things up to date. If it doesn't update quickly enough for you, you can also force refresh it. Obviously, there's nothing going to happen, but you saw the green check mark down here. And if you hover over it, you also see next refresh in a minute. Nice. With a little bit of a timer here. So you get some information, last refresh, next refresh, which for the minute is not really important. But if that's a longer time frame, that might be interesting. And then it automatically updates live depending on the data that is saved in your Atlas, in your Atlas host at MongoDB.
And the beauty of all of these charts is that you can, they're iframes, right? So you can take them and put them and drop them on any website, which is how we're running the other site.
Yeah, that's exactly how that works. So that's just embedded as an iframe. And if I just come back to, see, I got too many tabs myself now. One of the cool, one thing is, I say it again, I'm so sorry about that, but it's just like so many cool things.
All cool.
Yeah, it's just amazing because it's super easy to also share the dashboard. And what I can also do is say, I want to share that publicly. Everyone can view the dashboard. I have to click manage here and actually allow data access because I want to share it publicly, but that's fine. And if I use this URL now, I don't have to close it. I think it should already work. And now go into an incognito window.
Nice.
Which obviously doesn't have a session. You just get it there. So if I wanted to, I can also post a link there if someone wants to click it. You should be able to open this and see the session that we just created onto our brand new Atlas clone and the charts that I just configured there. And that's that part.
Excellent.
And that's more or less actually the part that we wanted to show with the demo and how to clone the repository that we prepared for you here with Atlas, with Beanstalk, with EC2. What about you two? Which questions are open? What comes to mind? And also, if someone has questions or more questions, put them in the chat anytime. So if you've been waiting for some of those questions, now is the time.
Yeah, I've been taking care of some of them that come in throughout, which has been great. I think the key thing for us on this is you've gone through, bar actually building the Unity game itself. You've gone through everything else, how you set up Atlas, how you set up the website, how you you didn't build a website basis live, but how you connected all that with AWS services there.
You can do that in a different section. So
bar the 20-minute detour of trying to debug something in the middle, I think this has been superb in terms of sharing everything. Igor, is there anything else that we kind of brushed over in the AWS services that you wouldn't mind bringing to light for anybody who's interested to learn more? Or where do they go to learn more if they're not familiar? Which I doubt, if you're a developer joining the stream, you're not familiar with AWS, but
we touched on a lot of things, right? We talked about Beanstalk, we talked about serverless, we talked about Lambda, we talked about different EC2 instances. We even touched on a specialized game lift service. Code commit we talked about, and GitHub, that's something we have. They have CI/CD. We did talk about CDK a little bit. I would really encourage people to look into CDK.
Yeah.
We didn't. Yeah, Dominic, you mentioned it was private link. Oh, well, private VPC. I mean, we kind of glossed over a little bit. But if you guys want to find out how to connect over, to have a private connection to Atlas, check out private link. I mean, everybody knows S3. We didn't talk about Amplify as the front-end framework. That's another topic I kind of was.
That's true. Yeah, that's also something that I actually want to look into myself more. Yeah.
Yeah,
Have you worked with it? Can you give us a rough idea of what it can do for us? Amplify.
Amplify is basically opinionated web and mobile application framework. There's a CLI, there is a administrative UI, and it kind of helps you build application faster, be more productive, kind of thing. There's even like a UI builder. So it's opinionated. So there are some certain choices and trade-offs they're making. So I would encourage front-end developers and application developers to check it out. But the game is here, productivity. You should be more productive with those, with the framework.
And we built a lot of tutorials and blog articles before, and together as well too. Igor, I know you're there as co-writer on a lot of those. So people want to check out, MongoDB and AWS together. Simply jump to that link there on the screen. developer.mongodb.com will get you into all our tutorials as well too, which is a great resource to get started. You can even go in and click AWS as the technology and the platform, and it will show you all the relevant articles. So that's a handy way to learn more as well too. And as I said at the beginning, this is the first of our Cloud Connect shows. We're going to have an AWS show monthly on Thursdays, and so plenty more opportunities for people to kind of connect and learn more about this. This was the one we wanted to start with, the one that was the most fresh demo in our mind, but we have a ton of other really cool content coming down the tracks. So yeah, definitely tune in again for these sessions, these Cloud Connect sessions every Thursday.
Awesome. And maybe next time I'll bring more of my people to kind of
balance
it out, like a 2-on-1.
That's what I've been waiting for. That's
the
make
more
it lively and fun. Bring AM with you. That was a lot of fun to be on your stream a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
And I'd love to do something similar again. And
awesome.
Thanks a lot for hanging out that long. That was like a whole hour more than planned, Igor. So
anytime. And there will be .local events. I'll be coming speaking to some of them. So if you see, I don't know, Shane, if you have a link for the calendar for .local events, they're all over US, EMEA.
If you go to mongodb.com/events, you'll find everything there for all our .locals forthcoming. And I think there's probably a couple of AWS summits still on the calendar.
Summits,
You'll find those as well too.
I might be in London one. I'm not sure. Yeah.
Nice. So, September. .local?
Yeah, September. Yes.
Great.
Yes.
And as Dominic alluded to earlier, we're trying to, this is Leafsteroids version 1. We are going to build upon this, and we are going to do, we mentioned multiplayer earlier and some other enhancements for .local London, which is at the end of September. And then we're going to hopefully, fingers crossed, also take it to AWS reInvent at the end of November, beginning of December in Las Vegas too. So if you liked what you've seen, hopefully you might be able to come along to either of those events and get hands-on with this game. And in an event scenario, it's really cool because we have an arcade joystick to play it. It's not the keyboard controls, a little bit easier to get used to, and rapid fire. So between now and then, Igor, you obviously have to practice to try and increase that 950 score, right?
Yeah. And where is my swag, by the way? Right? It was all bait and switch.
You didn't even get 1,000 points. There's no swag for that.
That was a round.
The requirement to come on at the next live stream is that you get at least 1,000
by 0. Okay, probably the division. If Igor divide by 10.
Yeah. Well, this has been superb. And look, thankfully, everybody who tuned in throughout, and Igor, more particularly, thank you for your patience as we sucked another hour of your day than we told you we were going to do. But this has been superb, and really appreciate you jumping on and joining and helping out and illustrating all the AWS side of things for us. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Dominic, the brains behind Leafsteroids, thank you so much for everything that you put together and making it super straightforward to follow. That README is stunning. I know, Igor, you're not a fan of READMEs. Go in there, check out the README. As we said, it's public, so please, make it your own, contribute to it, move it away from .NET if you want to.
If you want to.
It should probably be called Write Me anyway, because you just write it, but no one reads it ever. So
Write Me.
Look at the Write
I
Me.
like that. I like Write Me.
Yeah, there you go.
That's
Yeah,
perfect.
that's
So
great.
from this first inaugural Cloud Connect show, I think it was certainly entertaining, and that's how they're going to be going forward. We certainly all enjoyed that. I hope you did as viewers to this. There is another MongoDB TV show tomorrow. It will be at 5 p.m. UK time, 12 noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. It is office hours, MongoDB office hours with Rick Houlihan, modeling data for a car reservation system. So do join in on that one if you can as well. Roughly the same time that we started today, but tomorrow. But from all of us here, Dominic, Igor, myself, thank you so much for joining. It's been a pleasure and really enjoyed it. So we hope to see you again soon. Take care.
Cheers.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.